All right, so give it a start in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good luck.
I guess so to start off here, this is the all brushes category, which is very different from the any percent category because we need to get every brush power in the game, which is similar to like the tools in Zelda games, but we also need to obtain every optional brush upgrade as well.
Yes, so there are, in this game, sort of 13 or 15, depending on how you count it, main brush powers, and then several of them have sort of upgraded or hidden versions of them, and we need to collect every single one. Right now, in terms of gameplay, you're going to see LEGO jumping into every cutscene. Basically, in this game, our movement of our main character here, Amaterasu, or Ami, the wolf, is governed in 3 speeds. So there's a walking speed, there's a green dash speed, and then there's a gold dash speed. And those are 30% faster than the previous one, respectively. In this case, you can get green dash immediately just by doing a tackle on the ground, and you can get gold dash by using green dash for about 5 seconds. To prevent having to rebuild gold dash, for 5 seconds every time, we're going to be jumping into cutscenes and then jumping out of them to restore our dash meter. Also just now, you'll see LEGO just got our first brush technique, so this is the game's sort of central mechanic. We can pause the game at pretty much any time to draw on the screen like a canvas, to use to have various effects on the world, and this is sort of our substitute for items that you might find in Zelda games. The first technique we got there is rejuvenation, which lets us sort of replace things that are missing or broken in the world, and it's a fairly limited brush power because you can only use it in certain places.
Yeah. One other thing to mention is that most of the time when I'm coming out of cutscenes, even though I am jumping out of them, it doesn't necessarily look like I'm jumping out of cutscenes. And that's because the frame after Amaterasu leaves the ground, I'm then doing an air tackle. And when you do an air tackle, the frame after you leave the ground, your collision will shift down and you'll land immediately. And that's just the fastest way to get back to full speed. Yes.
In some cases, we'll do different things. You could, in theory, miss the frame-perfect tackle.
I certainly will at some point.
But you might sometimes do a tackle and then a jump instead of a jump and then a tackle, and that's because a tackle gives you a bunch of initial speed. Right here, we're getting our second brush technique. So this is the sort of the tutorial area, so they give you 2 right off the bat. This one is Power Slash, and it's our sword substitute. We can just draw lines through stuff to cut it down, and it's very useful.
So Power Slash is really useful in battles, as you might imagine, since it's basically a sword. And speaking of battles, I just skipped one. This game, the triggers for a lot of fights and some cutscenes are pretty small, a bit smaller than maybe intended. And so we are able to sometimes just run directly around these triggers without really much effort. Like I just did again there. There's actually 2 fights that I just skipped.
Yeah, and we'll get into the fight mechanics later when we get to the first unskippable fight. Right now we're just running back through the tutorial area to sort of get started with the game. So just a quick, mostly spoiler-free summary. This is ancient Japan, aka Nippon. We are the sun goddess incarnated as a wolf. We're actually the reincarnation of a previous wolf named Shiranui. The important thing is, basically, Shiranui 100 years ago defeated a great evil called Orochi, which is actually an 8-headed dragon. Orochi is sort of coming back now thanks to some guy, and we're out here to stop him, sort of. The more broad summary is basically there's an evil fish in a mech in a lake in Hokkaido, and we have to go kill the fish.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Another thing you may have noticed is in the loading screens, we're doing these sort of mini-games. So there's 2 kinds of mini-games. There's a rhythm game, very, very topical for tonight. And there's also a mashing game. And for the most part, we'll be avoiding the mashing game. But both of those are a way for us to get demon fangs, which are a sort of currency in this game, that let us get these collectibles, one of which we'll need specifically.
So coming up here, I'm going to be trying to do a pretty tough trick. I can't.
Right, so we have here our starting area, Kamiki Village. Kamiki Village is sort of just supposed to be filled with good people, but everyone has been turned into statues to protect them from Orochi's evil miasma. And we're supposed to, free them from their statue state and basically rescue the village, but we're just not going to do that because that would take too long. We are going to come back a little later, so don't worry too much about them. One thing about this rhythm game is it's extremely precise on timing.
Yeah. The timing for it, I don't know the exact numbers, but my guess is probably around 3-4 frames. This game is 30 frames a second. And so, and the timing is also based on a global cycle, not on an individual loading cycle, which means you actually have to, getting the first one is insanely difficult because you actually don't know when the first paw will show up to try to time with.
Yeah, getting the first one is basically luck, but you have 2 more chances for each loading zone. So this is Shinshu Field. You can see it's also covered in evil miasma. We're going to take a little detour so that we can go ahead and fix that. That brings us to Hana Valley, which is going to be the home of our next brush technique, but we're going to have to go on a bit of a trek to get there. This is sort of a side area / mini dungeon, depending on how you want to look at it. And this is going to bring us to our first actual battle. So the important thing is we have our enemies here. These are imps. They're green imps and red imps. The red imps have a little more health and they can block attacks. So we're going to be starting off by using our brush techniques. We're going to be setting things up in a very specific order. Whenever we use a brush technique, we lose a pot of ink, and we only have 3. And if we lose all 3, we end up inkless for a few seconds, which prevents us from using more brush techniques, and it also loses us our dash. So in order to take care of these fights slowly, we're going to be managing our ink very carefully and trying to hit multiple enemies at a time with each power slash. There are a bunch of other things in the fight that we have to deal with, but we'll explain things as we have more opportunities to.
Yeah, funny enough, it's hard to describe because that first fight there is probably one of the most complicated fights in the game to explain everything that I'm doing there, because there's a lot of things that I'm trying to get to happen, which mostly worked out. But most other fights are actually that's about, for a regular fight. That's not a boss fight. That's about as complicated as it gets. So this next fight. Yeah, so here we have another enemy. It's the yellow imp. So the yellow imp is sort of immune to attacks unless it's put in a specific state. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just wait it out and stand behind it when it comes out of the ground. And that's just because it does that. It just doesn't know where you are, and it lets you hit it for free.
Right, so you'll see during a lot of these fights is that we're doing specific finishers on enemies. This is a mechanic called the floral finisher. Basically, if you finish an enemy with a specific brush technique, and it depends on the enemy type, you will get a Demon Fang. And so this is an additional way for us to collect those Demon Fangs that we need. And we do need a bunch of them by a specific point in the run. So we're going to be collecting them as efficiently as we possibly can. Right there, you'll notice that we used Sunrise, which is another brush technique, to progress that cutscene, but we didn't ever collect Sunrise. As it turns out, a lot of things in this game that supposedly require Sunrise will just detect a circle, which is the symbol for Sunrise, even if you don't have the formal brush technique. But we will be getting it later because it is required for the category. Yet another thing to explain, so in this game, most dialogue and most cutscenes are skippable, but there are some cutscenes that could be skipped that we won't skip, specifically because the dialogue is so fast that it's actually faster to progress through the text rather than watch the scroll transitions for skipping a cutscene.
Oh, that's interesting.
Just a frame saver. Here we have a QTE with Susanoo, who is sort of our favorite sidekick. He is fighting a bear, and this bear has a ball. And if you know anything about ball physics, the ball physics in this game are incredibly frustrating. So I want you to watch carefully what Leica's doing here.
That was a perfect ball.
Yeah, if you've ever played this game, that will look like magic.
that was basically a perfect ball. The physics of this game do not like you at all. It basically just wants to constantly not attach, like it wants to attach to you, like to make it easy to push when you want to move around it. but then when you actually want to push it forward, it wants to detach from you. So it's very annoying. But yeah.
Yeah, there's actually like 4 different ball pushing mini games in this game, and all of them have their own uniquely terrible physics. But that is distracting from the fact that we just got another brush technique, which is Bloom, and that also distracts from we are just about to do another fight skip.
Yep.
Yeah, so that was the yellow imp skip. That one's a little bit more precise than the previous fight skips, if you couldn't tell. So Bloom is sort of a 3-part brush technique. It has the main effect of restoring guardian saplings, which are these unique big trees in many areas of the game, and they sort of restore the world. And that is one of our overall goals, to restore all the guardian saplings, to dispel the evil miasma. But it also has the side effect of there are sort of cursed patches of grass that we can restore. And also, if there is grass on the ground, we can draw a dot on it with the brush to make a tree appear, a small tree. And actually, all 3 of those techniques are going to be useful to us in this run, which might sound a little strange, but you'll see. And right there, we finally restore the Shinshu Fields Guardian Sapling. Sadly, we have to skip the nice, pretty cutscenes of the whole area getting restored.
So at this point, we're gonna head back to Kamiki Village, which is not something we would do in any percent. And that's because there is not 1, but 2 brush powers that we need. So we're going to be getting Sunrise, which, as previously mentioned, we skipped, as well as we're going to be getting another brush power.
So Kamiki Village now, despite our lack of intervention, is mostly healed. It's sort of in a half-healed, half-cursed state. We call it blurst. We are stuck inside the big rock that we jumped over before, so we have to actually clip out of it to get back into the village proper. And then some of the villagers are still statues, but some of them seem to be, lively and healthy. So we have to investigate 3 of these statues in order to trigger one of the brush powers that we're getting. Meanwhile, while we traverse through the village, we are going to be restoring all of the cherry blossoms in the village using Bloom, which is, each one is going to require a pot of ink, so we're going to be carefully managing our ink. And each time we bloom a tree, we get a little bit of another currency called Praise, and Praise is used to upgrade Ami's own abilities. Mainly in this run, it's going to be our ink capacity and our wallet size. One thing to note is that we actually specifically upgraded our ink earlier from 3 pots to 4, and that was to refill our ink. So whenever you upgrade ink, you get a free refill, and this is very useful to us. We're going to be saving some other ink refills for specific times in the run.
Got birds.
Yeah, so the button for digging is the same as the button for picking up an animal. I don't know why you should ever pick up an animal, but these birds are in the way sometimes. And right now we're doing a small minigame to get a turnip to hand to this statue boy. Very, very strange sequence of events, but that's going to be necessary later, of course. We are going to be trying to bloom multiple trees at a time by lining them up with the camera. And also here we're going to do a small bit of maneuvering to get up this mountain a little faster. Yes, so that trick is called Uppy Thingy. Very good name.
I love it.
So right here, I'm going to finally get the power of Sunrise, which will actually make Kamiki Village the way it was supposed to be. Just a quick fight here, meant to be one of our first actual fights, but here we are. And then right after this, I'm actually going to immediately go and get the next brush power, because you actually get them at the exact same spot. So by talking to Mr. Orange here, we are going to start the Konohan Shuffle, which is an extended cutscene essentially that I have to take a little bit of a part in.
Yes, so Mr. Orange here, the village elder, is going to do a very sober dance in which he inspires the great guardian tree of Konohana, to bloom, and we have to help out with that by using our bloom. And if you miss any of these circles twice in a row, you have to restart the whole cutscene from the beginning.
It's rough. It is very rough.
A very annoying time loss.
Especially, I'm hopefully not going to miss any of these blooms, but casually, bloom is a pretty awkward power to use. The way circles detect whether to bloom things or not is not quite as consistent as maybe they hoped it would be. And so this can actually be a fair bit of a challenge for people casually.
Yeah, people famously have some problems with the brush detection in this game. Obviously, as runners, we practice a lot, so we sort of have a much more intuitive understanding of what causes things to recognize and what doesn't. And we'll be actually sort of cheating the system a bit to get techniques to render faster than maybe casually intended. And with that gets us yet another brush technique, and this one is Water Lily, aka Lily Pad, and this lets us make small platforms on the water, which is going to be useful later. Yet another useful brush technique.
Yeah. One nice thing is that even though there's many brush powers that we skip in normal gameplay, when we do pick them up, they're pretty much all useful, even if only slightly.
Yeah, the other brush technique we got, Sunrise, lets us set the time today, and that is, I don't know if we use that in this category.
Yes, we do. Ida.
Okay. Yeah. So it is useful. And there we had to do the boulder skip a second time, because actually getting rid of that boulder is even more side questy stuff we have to do in the village, so we just don't do it. And here we're actually deliberately blooming some extra cherry blossoms to get some more praise, which we'll need at a specific time in the run. The amount of praise we get is very specifically routed, and we do skip a lot of things that would otherwise give us praise, so we do find ourselves short if we don't go out of our way to get a little bit extra.
Yeah, and it really is just a little bit extra. That is the only extra praise I will be getting this entire time. That's not a part of skips or something. For the most part, we get plenty of praise, but we need our praise upgrades quite a bit in this run.
Right here, we are starting a side quest. And that is specifically for its tutorial. The tutorial to the side quest sets the time of day to night, which we can't do yet since we don't have the brush power for that. And we're going to have a wanted enemy with a specific name. So I want you to guess a number from 1 to 5, Tippy.
3.
Okay, you guessed wrong.
No.
So the enemy,
Wow.
the enemy we got here, it is random out of a list of 5 names, and the name is written in Japanese. We are playing in Japanese if you haven't noticed yet, and that's specifically because it makes the text very slightly faster. Even though we can skip most text boxes, the text boxes we can't skip do go by faster. And in this case, we actually got the worst name. It's the last name on the list. 3 would have been the best
I
name.
cannot draw. There we go.
Yeah, so this name is Toya, if I remember correctly.
I do not know Japanese, and so instead of memorizing the names, I just have like a name in my head that is based off of what one of the kanji look like. So in my head, that one was Bodimp.
Yeah, there's many ways to avoid not knowing Japanese, or at least, and that's the only time you have to actually read anything in game. Very fortunately.
Yeah.
Here we have a fight with yet another new enemy. This one's called a dead fish. Yeah, that is the official name of this enemy. The dead fish is a sort of annoying enemy. Basically, what we're going to do is just power slash it 3 times. One thing we mentioned earlier is floral finishers, and one thing I didn't mention about floral finishers is that you can only get a floral finisher if you technically do the finishing blow on an enemy with your divine instrument, which is the melee weapon on Amaterasu's back. But for some enemies, we might have their floral finisher, but there's just no good way to get them down to 0 HP and finish them with a physical attack. So we just don't get the floral finisher, and we use the brush to finish them off instead. This here gets us one of our most useful combat abilities, which is Cherry Bomb, which is our bomb substitute, of course. And if you've played this game casually, you might be wondering, how are you going to use Cherry Bombs in combat? Isn't that a really unpredictable power? And you might be right about that, but we are a lot more persistent because there are great rewards to be had by correctly using Cherry Bomb.
one other thing to mention is that if you played this game, you also might have noticed that I didn't actually draw Cherry Bomb the way it's intended. Cherry Bombs are meant to be drawn with a circle, and then you draw a
fuse.
A fuse, yes. I forgot the name again. You draw it, and then you're meant to draw like a little fuse sticking out of it to draw a bomb. But as it turns out, the game is actually only checking for you to have drawn a circle of any kind of looped line with a line going through it. So we just draw as tiny of a loop as we can, and then we just draw a line straight through the middle and call it a day.
Can I ask, like, how it's done? Like, do you use the analog sticks to draw these, or? Okay.
Yes.
So basically, anytime you want to bring up the brush, all you have to do is hold down usually the right trigger by default in this control scheme. And then you can move around the brush cursor with the left analog stick, and you can press one of the face buttons to start drawing.
Okay, cool.
And you release the face button to release the brush and finish the stroke. So in this case, we are now in Agata, and immediately after blooming the Guardian Sapling for Agata, which comes at the very beginning of the area, we are going to be doing our first brush adventure, which is a excellent name for the trick, but it has very little to do with the other more famous BA. In this case, we're going to be using some very fun facts about the brush, one of which is you can move it around separate from Ami. The other of which is that it's a lot easier to clip it out of bounds than it is to clip Amaterasu out of bounds. And the third of which is that it is not affected by gravity. So we are going to be dragging the brush very far out of bounds here, and then clipping it back in bounds to bloom a cursed patch of grass. One nice thing about cursed patches in this game is that anytime you bloom a cursed patch, it always warps Amaterasu to the cursed patch in the cutscene. So that lets us basically warp across an area just by moving the brush. And we do that to skip a fight, which is otherwise completely unavoidable. So that skips the first fight with another character we'll meet later called Waka, which is very nice because it avoids us having to have a certain battle item.
This one right here, which we won't actually be using for quite a while.
It'll come up soon enough. We'll explain it later.
Yeah.
And then right there we passed by another character named Kokari. Kokari is missing his dog, and he's trying to fish to get the key, to get into the dungeon where his dog is lost. But fortunately, we have something better than key. We have a key, which is the Japanese word for tree, and that just gets us right into the dungeon. So this is the first major dungeon of the game. This is Tura Ruins, and right now we're going to try to skip a cutscene. So I did mention that most cutscenes in this game are skippable, but there are some which aren't skippable until dialogue starts. And this is the longest cutscene that had before any dialogue appears. So it's just a huge camera pan over the whole dungeon. We normally try to avoid this, but it's a bit precise to get over the trigger for it. But fortunately, we don't have to do much else in this dungeon, so most of that camera pan was of stuff we will not be doing. This dungeon is sort of divided up into two halves, and it's in the middle is our fan favorite anthropomorphic wall, Blockhead. And he is not very good at his job, so we're going to be clipping directly through his backside.
I mean, he is pretty good at this job. This trick is hard.
This trick was one of the most recently discovered major sequence breaks, so it's very precise. So we're going to be using the tree to sort of push us into the corner here. Blockhead's collision is sort of separate from the collision of the wall itself, so it's not a closed seam. And if everything lines up just right, we can get it to force us through into Blockhead and then activate him from inside.
We're gonna have to go back up strats here. Okay, there we go. Well, as always, first time after I upgrade the ink. So there, I clipped straight through Blockhead. And then inside of Blockhead, the way Blockhead works is you're supposed to tackle him in order to trigger like this little cutscene where you dot certain points. But luckily we can do it from the inside and not the outside. And so we don't have to clip all the way to the other side of Blockhead.
So this gets us our first key. The locks in this game are actual enemies that we brutally destroy. This game's dungeon structure is a little simpler than most Zelda games in the way that we never have more than one key at a time. We are actually going to be skipping some keys later, so we don't even get that many. Another thing you'll notice is that we picked up a few items along the way from those buds. Those are exorcism slips. There are 3 sizes of exorcism slips, small, medium, and large, and they are a very limited resource. Basically what they do is, in a battle, they damage every enemy regardless of position. It's basically a screen wipe, but they don't even need to be on screen. But it does a fixed amount of damage, and some enemies are more vulnerable than others. Because they're so limited, and because they're so useful, since they damage multiple enemies at a time, we are going to be saving them for the most useful times to use them.
Technically, the most useful time to use it would have actually been this fight, but because I already upgraded my ink, actually, I cannot use it during this fight, which is a bit rough, but just how it goes. I get some more ink. Here we go.
Yeah, another benefit of exorcism slips is that they don't consume ink, so in some fights where the ink usage is very tight, we might need to save them for those.
That was a terrible fight, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, basically in each fight, the selection of enemies you get is always the same, so we know exactly what to expect from each fight, but where the enemies spawn in the battlefield is random, and we call that spread. Sometimes the enemies are really close together, so it's really easy to hit multiple of them at a time with the brush technique, but in some cases they spawn really far apart, and there's basically no way to get them all within the frame of the camera in order to hit multiple at a time. And in those cases, that means we have to use multiple brush techniques, which raises the ink usage, and that just means things can go a lot slower if you run out of ink.
That was an example of a great fight, because they all spawned right on top of each other, so I was just able to power slash them all really easily.
So after defeating the 3 devil gates in this room, that sort of unseals these mushrooms here, and by using sunrise we can make them grow. These mushrooms grow into big platforms that we're meant to use to get up onto this ledge so that we can cut down those poison pots. But it's actually faster to bring the camera up there rather than to bring Ami herself up there.
This is hardly even a brush adventure. Like, you don't have to do any special techniques or anything to do this. It's just a little bit of dragging the brush around, and you can get them all in one clean slice.
Right, and having done that, the water in the dungeon is now purified, and we can go and get our brush technique. So another thing to talk about in this game is control scheme. So this game has been released on many platforms, and the control scheme has changed with pretty much each one. In this case, I believe, Lego, you're playing with the Switch Pro controller, and we're not using motion controls. So why is that?
I actually used to use motion controls for this game, but basically the biggest reason why I'm not using motion controls is that brush adventures don't... they work, but they're much harder to actually execute, and they're generally slower if you can. So for that reason, I'm playing with the stick. The Switch also actually has the option, when in handheld, to play like a touchpad, but that is even slower. So.
Okay, so I'll cut you off there to start explaining this next trick, which is almost impossible to explain. Basically, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be clipping directly to the end of the dungeon. In this game, the power we just got is the equivalent of hookshot. It's called Vine. We're going to be doing a brush adventure to clip the brush underground to frame a vine flower above Ami while she's in a very specific position that is under platform. The vine is going to clip us into that platform, and then we're going to jump out of bounds through the platform by cutting the vine at a specific time. Unfortunately, we missed there. So the timing window for that is kind of tight, and the camera can mess with you because you have to have the camera in the right place in order to get the cut on the vine. When you use a vine on Ami while she's grounded, once you cut the vine or once the vine releases, she actually retains her ground jump and tackle, and this lets us maneuver a bit more out of bounds than we would otherwise be able to. Another thing to note in this game is that in a lot of areas with interiors or with multiple rooms, the interiors are stored underneath other rooms, so we can actually just fall into a later room in the dungeon. That's something pretty specific to this dungeon in this case, but we are going to be falling down to get into places a little more later, and we just call that general concept an interior clip. That trick specifically is called Cookie Clip, after the runner who discovered a giant cookie jar. Blessed be Cookie's soul.
He actually found quite a few tricks for this game as well, in a pretty short time span, including the cutscene skip that I missed at the beginning of this dungeon.
So this brings us to our first fight. This is the boss, Spider Queen. Spider Queen's a very simple boss. We just have to use 2 vines on her backside to open her up. That reveals some eyes that are her weak points. And we just have to power slash through those, and we're then going to finish her off with a couple of exorcism slips. And there she goes. And that gets us a little bit of money.
So it's worth mentioning that at any percent, we actually do a skip to do this dungeon much later, but it's actually just slower because we need that money now for this run.
Yeah, so this category, out of all of the categories, all of the major categories in this game, this category is by far the most heavy on resource management. We need a lot of money, we need a lot of demon fangs, and we need a fair amount of praise. So pretty much every kind of currency we could get, we need to manage it very carefully. As well as all of our items that we're going to be using, we need to manage those. So we're going to be specifically using different strategies than we would use in a normal any percent run, just to make maximum economy of those resources. And that includes, in this case, doing a fight earlier that we could otherwise skip. This brings us to a little mini game to progress to the next area. We have to sort of time our vines on these flowers that are passing by really fast. As long as you don't miss any of these, the timing is consistent, but if you miss any of them, it can branch out in weird ways. So we're trying to avoid that. Otherwise, it's a pretty easy minigame.
It's like extreme log flume. Did either of you ever go on the ride when you were younger?
Oh, yeah. Sure, everyone's completely waterlogged at this point.
Yeah.
We couldn't progress past this point earlier because that river, if you fall into it, will actually drag you away in a cutscene. There are actually a couple ways around that, but they're both a little too slow for this category.
Too slow or too hard.
Yeah. That brings us to the next major area, Taka Pass. So a lot of the areas in this game can be sort of qualified as hub areas. They branch out into a lot of different places, and this is one of them. We're going to be buying some stuff just to prepare for some segments of gameplay a little later on. One of the items we are buying there is Steel Fist Sake. We got one of those earlier. Steel Fist Sake is one of the best battle items because what it does is it doubles the power of Ami's physical attacks as well as the power of Cherry Bomb, and that's one of the things that makes Cherry Bomb so useful. It doesn't double the power of Power Slash, strangely. But the nice thing about Steel Fist Sake compared to, for example, Exorcism Slips is that Steel Fist Sake is only 2,000 yen, whereas the cheapest Exorcism Slip is 4,000. So it's a lot more cost effective. So here's Waka. Waka, as a human, is very vulnerable to explosives. So just 4 alcohol-powered explosives takes him down. One thing to note about cherry bombs is the way they activate. So when you draw them, they're just sort of a prop that you can roll around, and then they will instantly detonate if they touch either an enemy or a prop in the world, like grass or a statue or something. Anything that can be physically interacted with, but not just general collision. So in some cases, we're going to be specifically drawing those cherry bombs directly over that kind of prop, so that they explode instantly, and then the explosion radius will catch the enemy. In other cases where we don't have those props around, it can actually be pretty hard to hit enemies with cherry bomb, because if you don't spawn it right on top of them, then it can be difficult to push it into them later. And obviously, it's a ball, so we have to contend with ball physics if that occurs. Yes, Waka is 100% human, for sure. Not anything strange about him at all.
So at this point, we've basically we've entered into the first point where the game really opens up since a bit earlier in Shinshu Field. So right now, there's quite a few side quests and places we can go. But the first thing we're doing is not a main quest, but is a side quest. These are the Molsters, and this is part of the side quest in order to get one of those secondary upgrades to a power later. This game, basically, the way this works is that every time they converge, every time they go down, they will always switch which line is which mole if they cross, which sometimes is pretty easy to follow. And sometimes, like in that last one, all 6 of them went straight in through the middle, and the blue imp that I needed to tackle, or the blue mole that I needed to tackle, could have been in literally any spot. So it's a bit of a luck, but you can always get it if you're good enough.
Yeah, the Molster minigame is a little tough. Right here we are heading over to our first example of a sort of a fast travel point. In this game, in most major areas, there is a mermaid spring. Some of them need to be unlocked first, but as long as you travel near it after it's unlocked, you will unlock the fast travel point, and we'll be using these a bunch later. This one in particular is locked behind a devil gate, so we have to defeat this blood ogre, and then another enemy. You might think that some of these side quests are going to be resolved much later, but a lot of them are going to be resolved sooner than you might think. So look forward to that. So now you'll notice we're going in the wrong way. We're supposed to right now go to the next village, Kusa village, but we're going to instead head to the area after that, which is Sasa Sanctuary. So Sasa Sanctuary is basically a bathhouse / inn run by a bird mafia. They won't let us in because the boss's daughter has been kidnapped. We are not going to save the boss's daughter, Rip Tune, and your wonderful music. She's getting eaten for someone's dinner, but we have better things to fry. We are going to be breaking in into their inn from the above or from below. It's difficult to explain. Basically, like I was saying earlier in Pseudo Ruined, a lot of interiors are stored underneath the map, and as long as we can get out of bounds, we can just fall directly in. And by underneath the map, I mean really far underneath the map. I mean like literally a kilometer underneath the map. So we're going to be falling for about 15 seconds. Hopefully directly into the loading zone.
Not quite. That's fine.
Okay.
I'd rather play it safe.
So that skips a big side quest, and it also lets us do this out of order. So here, another problem in this inn is that their bathhouse has no bath. So we're going to help dig for the bath with this old guy. So this brings us to our first digging minigame, and I think this is our only digging minigame. No, it's not our only digging minigame. The digging minigames have a slightly different controls to normal gameplay. Obviously, there are side-scrollers, and it's basically a escort mission. We have this guy with us. By drawing circles on him, we can make him go faster. And we just need to get him to the bottom, basically, as quick as possible, while maintaining good economy on our brush usage. And as soon as they get to the bottom and show us the spot, we can dig. And that brings up the water, so we can refill the hot spring.
The thing is, these mashing minigames are actually really atrocious if you're playing on modern consoles. The minigames were originally part of the original. They're part of the original release, and they were made in large part because the original release had awful loading times. And so these minigames were pretty necessary. But at this point, they're actually really not that necessary. The loading zones never really take more than 5 or 6 seconds most of the time. And so wow, I can't believe that. Anyway, but the mashing minigame, you have to press the A button 60 times to get a Demon Fang from it, which, if you play casually, is basically Like, that is a really high mashing rate. And a lot of casuals actually, like, can't get it. For me, I'm doing, like, actual mashing technique in order to get it in time. Not like I'm doing actual mashing technique, not only just to get it as fast as possible, but because if I don't, I probably wouldn't get it before it would just kick me out of the minigame entirely. It is a really, it's meant to be something you would do over like a 10, 12-second period, but it's very difficult to do.
So one symptom of breaking into Sasa early is that there is a side quest, or well, a main quest that we are getting into before we've really started it. What we have in front of us is a device called the Canine Tracker, and the dog we have in front of us is one of the Satomi Canine Warriors, and he wants to fight us, even though we just met. A very nice dog. Actually, one of the worst dogs. This is Take.
Yeah.
Take is very poorly behaved.
Take likes to jump.
Much like all dogs, Take is very vulnerable to explosives.
Ooh. Maybe Take's feeling nice today. Maybe? Oh, maybe not. Oh, it was just too late. No,
yeah, so there are going to be
finished.
multiple of these dog fights in the game, and all of them are some of the most inconsistent fights because the dogs tend to have pretty RNG fight patterns.
Yeah. This fight specifically is by far the worst of them because Take mostly just loves to jump around, and because he loves to jump around and jump so far, it's really hard to just actually hit him at all. Because the cherry bomb has such a small detection radius. It's here. Big in the wrong spot. And because the detection radius is so small and he's constantly moving everywhere, having a really fast Take fight is actually pretty rare. To have a really good fast one.
I recommend not actually exposing dogs to explosions.
Yes, we are not supportive of that at all.
It's for a good cause. We have to defeat all evil.
And to be fair, these are warrior dogs. Other dogs are not warrior dogs.
Yeah, so one thing we just did our first use of a fast travel point, so that was important that we activated this one when we did. We were actually trapped in Sasa Sanctuary there because we never unlocked the front door, and the front door is locked from both sides. That we can't just clip back out. So it's very convenient that they actually give us our first fast travel coin for free in order to get out of there, because otherwise it would be a soft lock. And yeah, now we finally get to Kusa village. Kusa is afflicted by a weird curse where our ink is constantly drained and we can't use brush techniques. And this is going to be important in a minute. So we're just going to run all the way to the back of the village where the source of the problem is located. And yeah, so this is our good friend, the Shrine Maiden Fusei, and we have a fight here with 2 green imps and a blue imp, our first blue imp. And you'll notice here that we aren't using brush techniques to defeat it because we don't have any brush techniques to use. We just have to smack the imp a bunch. So the divine instrument on Amaterasu's back is a physical weapon. It has a basic ground combo, and you can cancel it into an air combo, and that's sort of the best we can do for DPS. But it's not great, so we generally avoid using it.
So now we're finally going to actually get the canine tracker that we had inside of Sasa Sanctuary that just kind of appeared there. This is meant to show us where all the rather willfully left canine warriors are, because we need to go track them down. So the first 4 are actually here in Kusa Village, and luckily we don't have to fight them to get them to be nice. We just have to give them some food. So that's why I bought those 4 meat feed bags a while ago.
Yeah, they're just hungry. Not like the bad dogs who chose violence.
Yeah, so there's 8 dogs total, and so there's going to be 4 that we're able to just feed, and it's nice and quick and easy. And there's 4 different dog fights that we're going to have to do, which is pretty rough. So it's a lot of fighting, and with them being largely RNG.
Rough, you say?
You didn't have to do that one. Right here, we're gonna have another brush adventure, where it's gonna be another curse patch warp. So each of these dogs requires a brush power to get to, and so this one, you're supposed to bloom a curse patch for him to just come out of nowhere, I guess. It's kind of not there before, but by doing a quick brush adventure,
he's hiding in the dirt.
Yeah.
So right here, the game is going to pretend that we've fed 4 dogs. And that's because we went to Sasa Sanctuary early and already fought one of the dogs. The game is sort of just counting how many canine warriors we've retrieved, so to speak. And because we retrieved one early, we're already at the count of 4, which means the game is going to think that we've fed all 4 in the village, since that's supposed to be the first 4 you get to. But there is still 1 left unfed, and we are going to have to feed them in a minute. And that's actually going to have some very interesting effect. But instead here we're going to be fighting the first canine warrior supposed to fight, which is the weakest one, very nicely. This is Tay.
Okay, can either play really nice or be really mean. So we're gonna find out here. If Tay is nice, I draw these cherry bombs and he just does nothing. Hey.
Yeah,
the other rest of the time, he uses attacks with armor that can't be damaged through, and you either have to wait them out or power slash to cancel them, which is also slow and wastes ink, and it's very it can be annoying. So right here's the dog that we didn't feed, so I'm going to feed him. And now the game, after feeding him, is like, oh, you fed this dog. Let's place you right where the dog is, back in the tunnel where I was supposed to find him. And so this actually saves time just because of backtracking, because now I'm farther up in the village.
Yeah, we call this one meat warp, since we use meat and we warp. We have great trick names in the Okami speedrunning community.
So now I'm going to sell. I'm going to sell a lot of treasure. All at once.
Yeah, so we're coming up on a sort of bottleneck in the routing for money. We need a lot of money for some dojo techniques that are necessary to complete the run, and we need it all now. And you might ask, dojo techniques? What dojo techniques are you getting this early in the game? So this game can sort of broadly be divided into 3 major books, 3 major arcs. The first of which we are still in, and then the second of which we can sort of preview. So there's an area at the periphery of Taka Pass called City Checkpoint that is basically a big gorge with a drawbridge across it. The drawbridge is up, so we can't cross, and we're supposed to get a brush power at the end of this arc that lets us lower that bridge. But we have other plans. We need to fast forward a bit here. So this is City Checkpoint, and that's the big bridge. Now, we are going to be leaping face first into this river here, and we're going to be swimming as hard as we can to swim across. We do have Water Lily, and Water Lily can help us out here, but it is just faster to swim in this particular case.
Yeah, the lily pads aren't exactly slow movement, but drawing the lily pads is slow movement.
So you almost drowned there, but we can just barely get across. We can start climbing this rock here, which is sort of not really meant to be climbed on. It's just meant to be some scenery. And it's a very slippery collision. The game is trying to constantly push us off. And then by landing right on the tip of the rock, and then doing this very complex sequence of movement, we can actually jump up onto the other side of the gorge before the bridge is lowered.
Here's what the backside of City Checkpoint looks like, in case you're wondering. Definitely how it was meant to be looked at.
Yeah, they just did not bother to put any textures on the back of those houses. And that brings us to Ryoshima. So this is the start of the second arc of the game. So Ryoshima is also suffering from a little bit of black caviar sickness. We are going to be actually hopping into the curse zone here, a little flash of red. And this is specifically to just run around a fight trigger. They did not make the fight trigger extend into the curse zone very prudently, so we can just go around it. And we're going to be doing yet another brush adventure, and this one is going to help us skip moving some water around. So one of the powers we got earlier was Water Spout, which is a technique that lets us draw water from a source to a destination. Normally you're supposed to draw the water up between two different lakes to get it up to the top here, but we can just draw it directly from the bottom to the top by clipping the brush out of bounds.
And one side effect of that was that during that blooming cutscene, we get a small walking while talking state where I can move around while the cutscene is playing, but there's nothing really useful we can do during that.
Yeah, it's very brief, and walking while talking is a pretty restricted glitch in this game. Another thing I didn't mention before about interior clips, like what we did in Sasa Sanctuary, is that interiors don't tend to be stored directly under the corresponding exterior building. More often they're stored near the origin of the map, the 000 coordinate. And that can save us some time here, since we spawn a lot closer to 000 than to the dojo, which we're actually trying to get to.
So right there, I managed to clip out of bounds by, there's quite literally just there's just this like sliver where the collision is a little misplaced, and so we're able to clip through that sliver.
Yeah, in general in this game, clipping through collision is very difficult. The collision is very strong, but there they just actually put a hole in the collision so we can just slip on through. But usually what we're going to be doing is jumping over invisible walls rather than through them.
Right here I just got the power of double jump. Double jump is, as you might imagine, pretty useful for traversing around. And also, considering how much we've been able to do without double jump in terms of getting over walls and around stuff, I'm sure you can imagine that there's quite a bit we can do with another jump.
Yeah, double jump is one of the most useful abilities in the game, as you can imagine. Given how much we've already been able to do with just a single jump, double jump is really going to turn that up to 11. This next brush technique is a little less stellar of a review. This is just Digging Champ.
Oh, no walking.
Yeah. All it does is lets us dig through hard surfaces, and unfortunately it is a hard requirement for one of the brush techniques.
Whoa.
And that is done with the dojo. So that is our first major bottleneck of yen down. I do say yen, that is the name of the currency in English, but technically in Japanese, and I think in French as well, they call the currency ryo, which is the sort of the ancient Japanese coin. Just a small localization thing.
So one thing you might notice is that even though we bought all the dojo techniques we're going to need for the game, I then immediately went and picked up another treasure, and that's because we need a lot more money. We are going to be needing a lot of money in this game, so I will be picking up treasures basically until the end of the game, in order to not only buy dojo techniques here, but some brush techniques also cost money. And so in order to get those brush techniques, we need a lot of money.
Yeah, for reference, we haven't collected even 1/10 of the total amount of money we're going to need throughout the game. We need a lot.
Yeah. Treasures are worth more as you progress through the game, so it's not going to be too much of a collectathon, but we will be going out of our way to get quite a few things throughout this.
Here we are doing yet another interior clip, and this one is specifically to get into a building that isn't actually in existence right now. So the building we're trying to get into is consumed by another cursed zone, so it's not available, it just doesn't exist. But the interior still does, and we can still get into it as long as we're able to get out of bounds. The collision here is very slippery. This whole city, this is Seian City, it's sort of the capital of ancient Japan. It's entirely surrounded by mile-high invisible walls, except for a small hole in that invisible wall right above the loading zones. So by sort of clambering on the collision, we can get over it. And then leap over into the abyss, into the restaurant. So if you remember way earlier, we did a little fun game of tag with the Molsters. The Molsters gave us a golden mushroom. They gave us a golden teacup, sorry. We gave the golden teacup to the tea master, who gave us a golden mushroom, and we just gave the golden mushroom to Yama here, the restaurant owner, and he's going to put it in his oven, but the oven's not hot enough, so we need to use our divine inspiration to make it hotter. So this gives us the power of fire, Fire Burst. Fire Burst is actually a secret technique. It is an upgrade to a technique that we didn't get, but the game just makes it work for us. It does not care that we didn't get Inferno, it just gives us Fire Burst. But it does not give us Inferno, so we are going to have to go back and get that later. Yama, of course, uses the golden mushroom and our divine heat to create a fantastic dish. It's so good that you get paid when you eat it, and so from eating all of that food, we got 26,000 yen.
Very economical food. So at this point, we're heading to the back of Seon. We're actually meant right now to go in. There's basically, these are canals, and we're meant to put water back in the canals. But that is slow. Yeah, that's another big mini game, but that is slow. So we're gonna not do that. There we go.
Yeah, by abusing the slippery collision of that tree, we can actually get something called a sliding ground tackle. We can conserve the speed of the slide into a ground tackle. As long as we jump out of the ground tackle before it ends, even though we're in the air, we still get a ground jump, which means we can conserve our double jump, and that gives us just enough height and distance to get over onto the bridge. Here we're squeezing through some collisions, sorry for the flashing, and that skips a short conversation with another character named Rao, who we'll be meeting shortly. For Rao, we have to retrieve her prayer slips, which are her divine weapon. And this brings us to the courtyard of the Imperial Palace. Seon's a little bit of a strange city in that there's an Imperial Palace, and then there's also another palace, which we'll also be visiting later. Don't really ask me to explain the politics of ancient Japan. It's a little over my head.
I'm getting so many mashing mini games.
Yeah, that's awful.
It's just how it is. So right here, we're collecting a lot of treasures. Right here, we actually just collected a Vengeance Slip, which is actually another battle item that makes you invincible for 30 seconds, I think. But because we are decent at the game, we will actually just be using it for money. It's just more money.
Well, we need that.
Yeah.
We do.
So here we have Rao. Everyone say goodbye to Rao.
Bye.
Lego, what's your favorite part about Rao?
My favorite part of our, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. She's pretty emo.
I like how kind she is, offering to help us on our journey.
Mm-hmm. This is very sweet. We actually came all this way specifically just for Rao. Because in order to complete a mini dungeon later, we actually need to have Rao help us out. The game will effectively soft lock otherwise, so we have to do this.
Yeah, we're very much so choosing specific flags that we need to activate in order to not get the game stuck in certain places later on. The game is pretty flexible in terms of sequence breaks, but there are a bunch of flags that are missable in terms of story events if you do them out of order. So we do have to pick and choose our battles. Here we're doing a very tough skip, and I'm going to talk over Lego here.
Yes.
Basically, the entire cliff face here is made up of a type of collision called a jump barrier, where if you're above it, you can't jump. So what we have to do is do sliding ground tackles so that we're no longer above the collision before we jump. And then jump back onto the collision. It's extremely precise. Lego just got it first try, so that was very nice.
Very happy with that.
That's honestly one of the hardest tricks in the game. Very smooth. And what that does for us is that skips over a border checkpoint, Normally, in order to get to this area, North Rio, we would have to do basically the entire first half of this second chapter of the game. We'd have to do a whole dungeon. We'd have to visit the Queen Himiko, Queen of Japan, in her palace. It would be a big ordeal, and we don't really want to talk to her just to get through a gate. So we're just going to jump over the gate, and that is what we did.
So in North Rio, there's actually quite a few things that the game wants us to do, but we're going to actually do what the game sort of wants you to do at this point, which is there's a huge tower in the background that you might be able to see, and we're going to be heading there.
First, we're going to buy a bunch of specific items that we'll be needing. We bought 7 Steel Fist sake. That's as many as we'll need for the whole rest of the run. It's a lot of alcohol. Very irresponsible of that merchant to give one dog so much alcohol.
Yeah, no, I'm not really sure if that's necessarily the smartest move.
And just to be clear, most of the humans in this game can't tell that we are a divine god. They just see us as a white wolf. So, not very safe behavior. I think he's going to get a visit from the ancient Japanese health inspector.
So I went out of my way there to activate a mermaid spring for later, because otherwise it wouldn't have let us warp there. And now I just activated Orca. I summoned Orca, who is basically the emissary of the Dragonians. We'll be meeting the Dragonians later, but for now we're not going to be seeing them for a bit. Orca is basically a ride for around this huge ocean.
He's fast, and that's what we like about him.
Yeah, there is also a water dragon in the area that will come and take you out if you try to come here alone. I think it actually is possible to come here alone, but it's faster just to get Orca.
It would be very slow.
Yes.
So this is Catcall Tower. There's going to be a fight right at the start here that we're skipping, but if you can look, that tower is very tall. And unfortunately, we don't have a secret way of skipping all the way to the top. We just have to climb. This is a tower covered in so-called kabegami marks. Basically, we can stick to the wall and then jump back off. Every time you stick to the wall, you have to press the jump button. And every time you want to jump off the wall, you have to press the jump button again. And because jumping on and off the wall is slow, we try to use our double jump between every time we stick to the wall. So basically, every time we double jump, we're pressing the jump button 3 times in total. And overall, to get to the very top of this tower takes about 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and it requires just about 208 presses in a very rhythmic pattern. So this is a thrilling exercise.
Yeah.
For the thumbs.
This is a power that actually can be skipped in any percent, which is pretty nice because this is honestly not the most fun power to have to get.
It is useful though. The skips for this power are themselves pretty difficult. It's one of the latest powers we learned how to skip in New Game. So having it does cut out some difficult tricks. Like a reminder to land on one of these cloud platforms when you get the chance.
What will happen? Will I lose 2 seconds?
Quite the opposite. So we landed on that platform and we got a bit of text there. You might think that's a bit of a mistake, right? Because we watched a cutscene, we didn't have to. The reason we do that is because if we don't watch that cutscene, we get a longer cutscene when we reach the top of the tower. And that's sort of because of an oversight of the devs. Basically, there's a sort of an Easter egg for getting to the top of the tower the second time. But if you don't hit any cutscenes on the way up there, you can actually get it the first time. And we actually don't want that because the cutscene for the Easter egg is really long. And there's a cat up here. It's a Catcall Tower, so we got a big cat. Well, a small cat. We feed it some fish. And as gratitude for feeding the cat, the god of walls smiles down upon us, gives us another brush technique. We haven't really talked about it up till now, but each god has a constellation, each brush god, and when you fill in the constellation, you get the brush technique. We've skipped all the cutscenes, so you haven't gotten to see the brush gods much.
Can I ask how many brushes there are total?
So there is at least one brush god for every zodiac sign. There are technically 13 different brush gods, or brush techniques, except one of them is actually 3 different brush techniques, and then there are also the optional brush techniques.
I think in total we'll be getting like a unique 22 or 23.
Oh, okay.
There's, for any percent we skip 5 of the main brush powers, but we actually still get one of the secondary brush powers to replace it.
Actually replaces 2.
Replace 2 of the single brush powers. But for this, we're obviously getting...
Counting them is kind of difficult to do
it sounds a little bit
an
tricky.
absolute way.
Maybe we just count the brush gods instead.
In that case, I guess it'd be 15, because basically there's one for each zodiac sign, except there's 3 gods. There's 3 bear gods. So they all sort of share one thing.
So can I ask you, who's your brush god? Just start asking people that instead of what's your sign.
Oh god, that would make me that would make me Blizzard.
That would make you Blizzard?
Oh no.
That would make me... I can't remember.
I actually... Anyway.
Year of the cow? Anyway, moving on. We did another QTE. Pretty, not very important. We did it pretty much entirely because afterwards, the game only lets you go and find the next dog in that dog quest we started a while ago, after you do that. So...
Yeah. Basically, we did a big detour into the second arc of the game, and now we're returning back to the first arc to take care of business. So we're going to be doing fishing here. So if you remember a long time ago, we skipped a fishing minigame. So the game is actually now going to be mildly confused. TMR copyright. Basically, the fishing map thinks we're in the first fishing minigame, but the rest of the game thinks we're in the second fishing minigame. So we are going to do the first fishing minigame, which is nice because it's actually a little shorter than the second fishing minigame. But we are going to get the rewards afterwards of having done the second fishing minigame, and that is overall a good thing for us.
One of the rewards is in fact a brush power, so it'd actually be very bad if we couldn't get that brush power.
Yeah, it's very nice that things just work out this way, just because of the weird way this game handles story flags.
Oh, didn't do that.
Yeah, Kokari likes to give a hearty yeet every time he throws his fishing line. The fishing minigames in this game are overall relatively simple, just holding the opposite direction of the fish. The fish like to move around a bit randomly, so it can be a little frustrating, especially with some of the faster fish, but it is not too bad. There's also sort of... Go on.
Go ahead.
Each fisherman has like a limited stamina bar, but the fishing minigames that are required are so short that we can sort of just burn stamina and ignore it. And this gets us Crescent, our next brush technique. So this is sort of the inverse of Sunrise. It sets the time to night instead of day. It does have a few specific uses other than that, but we're going to ignore those because they don't matter. And this is Ume. This is a dog we rescued earlier from the jaws of the Spider Queen. And they are now fighting us.
Yeah, as it turns out, one of the best friends of the people we went here, one of their dogs, was actually a canine warrior. And, it would be crazy if 2 different people had their best friend dog turn out to be a canine warrior. That would be ridiculous.
If I had a nickel for every time that happened.
Yeah, so now I'm just going to be running all the way back to Kamiki Village. Which is a bit of a run.
So, Shinshu Field, the area right between us and Kamiki Village, does have a fast travel point, but it's just not worth using, mainly because activating it earlier would have caused us more movement, and we would have had to watch some cutscenes that we can otherwise avoid watching. So we're just going to run directly to Kamiki Village and then activate the fast travel point.
Here's Kushi hauling that huge thing all by herself. Not quite sure how she does it.
She's very strong. She's buff.
She is. I'm not sure how she got it up the hill in the first place, because the ferry is actually down right now. So the only way to get to there is to somehow swim across that entire area, supposedly at least. Doesn't necessarily make that much sense, but life finds a way.
She's buff. Shout outs to Sheptastico for the buff Kushi fan art. Anyway, so this brings us back to Kamiki Village. You'll notice Kamiki, they got rid of the boulder. So yeah, they didn't need our help with that after all. And now we are going to go fight the final canine warrior. So this is the reason we had to dig up all those turnips at the beginning of the game. If we didn't do that, this dog would refuse to fight us because we wouldn't have beaten his turnip digging record. So we are the turnip digging champions, and now he wants to beat us up over it.
He's willing to, pretend we're rivals.
One nice thing about this fight in particular is that there are a bunch of props on the ground that we can use to activate the bombs. One downside is those props are grass, and whenever you blow up grass, there's a very high probability it will spawn a vegetable. And every time you run into a vegetable, you get a text box telling you which vegetable you just ran into.
Well, it's actually only the first time you run into a vegetable, but the rest of the time we're never going to run into a vegetable, so it's basically, we're pretty much always going to get a text box.
Yeah, and it's slow. It's just a little obnoxious.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have now either defeated or fed all 8 canine warriors, so we have to go all the way back to Kusa village and report back to Princess Fusei to get our next directions. So like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be finally now activating this fast travel point just so we can return to Taka Pass to get to Kusa village faster. We are going to be using this fast travel point again later, but we'll get there when we get there. This fight is a little interesting in that it's made up of 4 different waves. So we're going to be trying to take out these enemies in such a way that each wave spawns a little faster than they otherwise would, while trying to still get the floral finishers. The next wave only spawns once the previous wave, all the enemies have fully finished their death animations. Yet another thing that we have avoided mentioning up till this point. There's so many mechanics that are important to our gameplay. At the end of each of these fights, we are barking. This game has a dedicated bark button. That's the main thing I wanted to discuss. But the side effect of that is that whenever you bark at the end of a fight, you can shorten the time for the results dialogue to clear by about a second. So that saves a lot of time at each time. So we're not just barking for the sake of barking. Even though we would definitely do that.
Yes. Barking is a fun thing to do. And I've definitely, you can bark at any time. It's just meant to bring up the HUD so you can look at your yen and praise and stuff. But it's a very fun way of doing so.
Yeah, the developers of this game knew it was good.
Yeah. There is something to mention here. So for this category, skipping the dog quest wouldn't really matter because we would still need to do it in order to get the Power of Crescent. But for any percent, there actually is a method of skipping the entire dog quest, but it has not yet been done in a run because it involves a minimum of about 6 frame perfect inputs
In a row.
With
one of which has no visual cue.
No visual cue, and they have variable timings. So it is very difficult, obviously, but
Yeah.
it is one of the things that it has been done by 3 different people now. So it's not it's certainly not impossible to happen in a run, and it would save at least 6 or 7 minutes probably. But it's really hard.
Ultimately, for the best, we're not having to do that in this category.
Yeah.
We did just retrieve the Satomi Power Orbs. Basically, each canine warrior has one of these orbs, and they've given them all to us. And these 8 orbs all together make up the key to the next dungeon, which is Gale Shrine. So So this little entrance area sort of locks us off from the rest of the dungeon. The rest of the dungeon does exist, it's loaded, but it's very far away physically. So the only reasonable way for us to get there is to warp there through this loading zone, which only exists once we clear the barrier with the power orbs. After that, this dungeon is fairly straightforward. A little bit of a camera pan here. The camera pans are always a little annoying since you can't skip them like most cutscenes. And then coming up next, we're going to be fighting another new enemy. This one's pretty basic. It's the Chimera. The Chimera, the main thing to know about it is that it dies after 3 cherry bombs. It's pretty resilient. And we have to make sure we stand the right distance away from it between those cherry bombs because it has a sort of a backlash where it'll splash dangerous water everywhere every time you hit it. You'll notice that after we blew it up, the yen went everywhere. Whenever you defeat an enemy with cherry bomb, it basically just gets completely obliterated and its yen flies all over the place, which makes it a little bit more difficult to collect, if you can imagine. One mildly interesting thing about these lockjaw keys is that you can drop them and they will respawn in your mouth. So we can just yeet that key over there, just for fun. Another nice thing is that you can't bark while you're carrying a key, so if you throw a key, you can bark more.
Yeah. Technically, I think optimally, if you drop the key as much as possible, you can actually drop the key 3 separate times and it'll respawn in time. But it's a little bit risky, so decided not to do that.
So we have here an explosive-powered elevator. Very normal.
I'm sure it's very convenient for all the residents to use. Because this is their shrine. This is their shrine to the god here.
We're going to be lining up our camera in a specific way here to activate the elevator immediately after this cutscene. Normally when you draw a cherry bomb, it spawns a fixed distance away from the camera depending on how big you draw it. So if we draw it at the smallest size possible, and then stand a certain distance away from the elevator, we can ensure the cherry bomb spawns directly on top of the center of the elevator. And that skips us having to fall down to activate it. Nice minor time save.
So yeah, this is generally, I would say this is definitely my my personal least favorite dungeon. It's just a little bit too linear.
I like how short it is.
I like how short it is, really.
Yeah.
Wow, it's crazy. It never struck me as that short.
It's a breeze.
That was terrible. So we are getting the power of wind here. Specifically, Gale Storm is what it's called. That was so terrible. kind of painful, I won't lie. This power, we're not going to be using it much in battle or anything, but it does have a few points where we need it for story progression.
Yeah, the one thing we'll be doing immediately after this is that rather than climbing all the way down this big windmill the way we came up, we're going to be clipping out of bounds a bit and then falling all the way back to the bottom of the dungeon, which is going to look a little silly. And this is only something we can do thanks to having double jump, because otherwise the invisible walls are too high. And that just saves us a few seconds getting down. Someone asked, favorite dungeon? My favorite dungeon, I'm going to have to say, is Oni Island, and we'll be seeing exactly why that is later. How about you, Lego?
I'm not sure. I part of me actually wants to say Wildcare Shrine, but maybe Mooncave. I like both of them.
Yeah, Mooncave is definitely a close second for me.
But what was I going to say? Oh, you may be noticing we're not beating the boss of this dungeon. We're actually just leaving. Isun just asked us if we were playing in English. Hey, you're ignoring the boss of this dungeon, Crimson Helm.
His line is, word for word, you can't ignore Crimson Helm forever, and then we have to promise to come back later. We are not going to be coming back later.
Yeah, we're done with here.
We got our brush power. The residents of the village can handle it. I'm sure Fisei will be fine. She has 8 whole dogs with her. They'll be fine.
Yeah. There are some minor consequences to doing that. Mostly that defeating Crimson Helm is actually the normal story trigger to enter another dungeon. So we'll be needing another way to do that later. But we won't actually be entering that dungeon for quite a while. But this is also basically, we were coming back and doing a whole bunch of backtracking, but this is basically the end of our backtracking. We're finally going to be pressing forward in the game. We've cleared up some of the stuff we wanted to do in the first arc of the game. Now we're finally going to head back into the second arc where we pushed forward earlier.
Lego, favorite key item. It's a good one.
Favorite key item?
Yeah. I don't even know if I can remember all of them.
Maybe the treasure box?
The one for...
I don't know. That's such a weird question.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say my favorite.
Is it Astral asking?
Yes.
Yeah, of course it is.
My favorite is gonna be the Sewa Prolo, because it has the funniest name.
That is a funny name.
Fun challenge in chat. Can you remember what the Sewa Prolo does? First person to answer gets a hearty bork.
This one's for you.
While we're waiting for some answers to come in, I just want to let you all know that if you are watching this on YouTube from the future, make sure to go to twitch.tv/gamesdonequick. If you are interested in seeing our content live, we start most weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern and weekends at 1 p.m. Eastern. And thank you all so much for watching here on Twitch right now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, TP. We just got to Watcher's Cape. It's a big plateau. We just talked to the Watcher. The Watcher wanted to see the Whirlpool Galaxy, but it wasn't visible, so we granted his wish by letting him wish upon a shooting star, which we drew in the sky. The Whirlpool Galaxy then magically appeared, and now we're blowing the wind on Earth to make the galaxy appear.
Well, to make the galaxy spin in the sky.
Well, yeah.
And then by making the galaxy spin, that somehow then opens up a whirlpool on Earth. So there's a lot of, smart stuff going on here. Very logical stuff.
We are just so far behind ancient Japanese astronomy.
Yeah. They knew something we didn't. Oh, that's a random glitch. I have no idea why that happens, but right there the lily pad appeared way far above. Like, if for some reason, I'm not sure why it happens, but the lily pad will sometimes appear directly beneath you rather than where you draw it. And it's annoying when it happens. I have no clue what it caused.
I could honestly believe that's an intentional mechanic.
It could be, except it doesn't happen most of the time, which is part of why it's so weird.
So yeah, we just opened the Whirlpool, which is actually the sort of the portal to the realm of the Dragonians. We are not going to go see the Dragonians right now. We're going to do that a bit later. We have some more important business. Basically, there's an island over here, and on this island, there's a guy.
Yeah, a guy.
A great guy.
Yeah, he's got a pole there, but his pole is not good enough because he's looking for the Marlin. But luckily, we happened to buy this Marlin rod earlier. How convenient! So I believe he steals it from us, and then now we have to help him fish as well.
I want you all to listen closely to the sonorous cry of this guy. Excellent fish.
Got the blowfish.
The fugu.
That's the real pogfish. But after 2 rounds of catching the regular fish that are around here, we finally get the opportunity to catch the Marlin.
And the Marlin is extremely fast.
Yeah, the Marlin is actually one of the toughest fish to catch in the game. Actually, be careful with my stamina here because it's not playing this.
Yeah, it is technically possible to run out of stamina, at which point your fisherman basically gets flung into the sea, and you have to do the fishing minigame over again.
A lot of times.
Okay, so you can see he got his fish. Now we're just going to set that aside for a little while. We're going to get back to that later.
It's actually a bit rude because, we're helping these people fish, and when we help other people fish, they actually just give us their fish. And maybe that spoiled us a bit, but that guy actually just takes the marlin, which is the most valuable fish in the game, if I remember correctly. So it's pretty rough that we don't get that fish for money.
Yeah, but having helped that guy out, the very great guy, we're going to finally head to the Dragon Palace, which is actually located at the bottom of the sea. Great place for a palace, very scenic. Don't worry about breathing, just don't think about it.
It works. We got our godly abilities. There's some excuse we can make up.
Oxygen is all in your head.
Well,
so yeah, we have
that is true.
We have the Dragonians here, and we're going to go directly to the boss. You'll notice that okay, you may not notice this, but the Dragon Palace is suspiciously similar to Sasa Sanctuary, and in fact, Orihime sits in the same place as the bird boss.
Right there, I said no to a prompt, which is, kind of one of the moments that I wish this was in English, because it literally just says, "Do you want to listen to Orihime again?" And the first option is yes. So if you just mindlessly click, you'll just keep listening to the same story over and over again.
Yeah, it's basically the Kepera Gebera of this game, except it's the only time the game does that. It's the only time. Very strange. So yeah, Orihime gave us a hit mission on her ex-husband, soon-to-be ex-husband. Spoilers. But we're going to go take a bath first, because we're underwater, but we're not under enough water. We need more water. We need waterier water.
Well, specifically, these are hot springs, so I assume they want hot water. It's important. So the first thing I'm going to do is reset, because I still have mini games on. And then I'm going to do this.
This digging minigame is a little strange in the fact that you fall to the bottom first, and then you have to dig your way up to the top to then go dig back down again with the person you're escorting. But we can do a jump the first frame we restart the minigame, and that lets us skip the part where we go down and then dig back up, which saves a bunch of time in this digging minigame. We are also deliberately using an item called an Infinity Stone, which means we have an unlimited amount of ink, and that's very essential for this particular digging minigame, because it means we don't have to worry about conserving our ink for all of these brush techniques we're using. Digging minigames are like some of the heaviest points on using a whole bunch of brush techniques at once, because it's basically the only way to progress.
Went that one pretty well, though. It was a pretty good one.
Yeah, that was good. Very nicely done. That one's often very annoying to get right. Yeah, a lot of people don't know casually that you can use the cherry bomb in digging minigames to get through faster. It's very helpful. So we got the water, but the water isn't swirly enough, so we're going to get a new brush technique here. The swirly brush technique. Yeah.
Yes, this is the swirl brush technique. This technique basically is just a replacement of mermaid coins. So now whenever we want to fast travel, we no longer have to. It's just a brush power. We don't have to worry about yen routing.
Yeah, very convenient.
For those mermaid coins.
And so having taken a bath, we are finally ready to. We are all well sanitized. We're going to go do some laparoscopic surgery, endoscopic surgery. Basically, the water dragon is just hanging out here with his mouth open. He's asleep, so we're gonna hop right in. And whoa, there's a lot of stuff in here inside this dragon.
So yeah, this is your typical everyday dragon. You got your weird looking trees, you got your weird looking grass. That's the wrong item. Oops.
I'm sure that'll come in handy.
I'm sure it will. We've got our crystals, our indoor waterfalls inside of the dragon.
You're not supposed to have crystals inside you. That's definitely a no-no.
Yeah. I hear kidney stones are bad.
Yeah, I think that might be why he's so angry.
Probably.
Yeah, basically, what was supposed to happen is we were supposed to talk to Queen Himiko. Queen Himiko was supposed to complain to us that the Dragonians aren't handling their dragon. They got this big water dragon here, and it's going berserk. And so basically she sends us to file an official complaint with the head of the Dragonians. But then we get to them and they say, we're not really in control of the water dragon. You know that, right? It's actually our king. It's the queen's husband. But we agree he's pretty angry, so we're just gonna off him. So that's what we're here for. But don't worry, we're going to take care of it. He'll be fine. So there's the water orb. This is what makes the water dragon the water dragon. I'm sure that will not be important. And here's the problem. We have a whole room full of acid.
What do you do with acid?
Yeah,
we're try to break out this weird ulcer thing.
Yeah, so we're going to do the proper medical thing. I learned this in biology. Whenever there's an ulcer, you apply the stomach acid to the ulcer to break the ulcer. That means you don't have an ulcer, and that means you're all better.
Yeah, that's how this works.
Now there's stomach acid all over the place. We may have been a little aggressive in our treatment. So we're going to be swimming through the acid. The acid constantly damages us, but fortunately we have lily pads, so we don't die. But we do get close to dying, and so we're just going to solve the problem even more. We're going to apply some acid directly to the water orb, and that will reveal the actual source of the problem. So excellent medicine, Dr. Lego.
I do my best.
He has a big case of tube foxitis. So we're going to take care of these tube foxes. They drop a ton of demon fangs. In fact, one thing to note about this is that whenever, with these tube foxes especially, they die basically the instant you do the floral finisher on them. And so we intentionally don't do the floral finisher on one of the last foxes, just so that we have enough time before the battle ends to collect all the money. Anyway, having done that, the water dragon is having a bit of a bad case of the massive hemorrhage.
It's a case of the Mondays.
Yeah, so there's acid falling from the ceiling. It's very bad.
But there is a small amount of RNG here, but for the most part, if you're going fast enough, the acid will hopefully not hit you. But occasionally it will hit you, and if it hits you while you jump over that water, you will fall all the way down to the water, and there's nothing you can do about it.
We call it the RNG acid. So yeah, we may have made a small mistake in our surgery. The patient is deceased.
Luckily, the ghost of Wada, the one who became the water dragon, did tell us that it was like a little okay or something. If I remember correctly.
He's fine with it. He's a force ghost now.
Yeah, basically, yeah, he's a force ghost. So we just talked to Otohime, and she's like, "Oh no, Queen Himiko is in danger." We should have already talked to Queen Himiko before this in order to get into North Rio at all, but we got there other ways. So, but we really do care about Queen Himiko here, so we're gonna do our utmost to get there as fast as possible.
Yes, we're going to take the straightest possible path to the palace, which is, we're speedrunners, so of course we're going as fast as possible.
Yeah.
It is of course our main mission to resolve all of the troubles of Japan as quickly as we possibly can.
I do want to also point out that there's some banger music right now. It's one of my favorite songs. One of my favorite songs in the game.
Don't get too attached to the music. We are trying to go fast here, of course.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, we're just going to take a straight on path right to Himiko's palace. So one unfortunate thing is basically they've sort of locked up the front entrance to Seon City because they're kind of worried. They got word that something's up with Himiko, so they're locking things down a bit. But that's no problem. We have another plan. So we're still going to take the straightest available path and I'll let go.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
There's this cool ship over here, man. What can I say? I love me some cool ships.
What about Queen Himiko?
She'll be fine.
Oh,
She'll be fine.
Okay.
She's got this.
I'm sure this won't take long.
Yeah. We'll be in and out in a jiffy.
Yeah, quick 2-minute dungeon. She'll be fine. So this is the sunken ship. We sort of broke our way in by using a lily pad clip. We drew a lily pad in a corner. We used Galestorm to blow it in a direction, and then we walked forward. And in this particular case, that lets us clip right into the ship. And Rao's here. You remember Rao, everybody?
Rao's a while ago.
Rao's a perfectly upstanding priestess. She's going to help us out in this dungeon by helping us get rid of these ghosts. So we're going to do... So this dungeon has a bit of a tide mechanic where you can, in a specific room, you can draw a sunrise and crescent in order to raise and lower the water level. But they sort of just did that by making a patch of sky register sunrise and crescent rather than making it so you have to be in the actual room. So by clipping the camera out of bounds, we can activate the tide mechanic and clip ourselves out of bounds by raising the water while we're directly under a ceiling. And then we can navigate out of bounds using these water lilies. Otherwise, we would actually drown because it's too far a distance and there's very few ways to get air while you're out of bounds here. We don't have to worry too hard about clipping back in accidentally because walls in this game are double-sided, but fortunately ceilings and floors are not, so we can clip back in when we want to.
Yeah, we just went straight to the end of this dungeon.
Yeah, this dungeon's actually pretty big, this mini dungeon, and we just skip basically the whole thing.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of dungeon here that they're meant to do, and even without Lilypad, it's still not too hard to get the entirety of the dungeon. Just sort of how they ended up making it.
Yeah, going out of bounds there saves something like 11 seconds versus the next fastest way of yeah. Beating this dungeon.
But it is the coolest way.
Yeah, and so after clearing the sunken ship there, here's the water dragon. He's fine.
Yeah, we didn't kill him.
See, guys,
he's all good.
He was okay. He was just temporarily dead, or temporarily sleeping.
We resurrected him.
He's fine. He just swallows himself and spits us out.
Through the power of friendship, we brought him back to eat us alive. We get eaten there because getting eaten is faster than going to shore manually. Because there's no punishment to getting eaten, so just get eaten to get teleported. But now we're gonna go save Queen Himiko.
So yeah, we have this cool bouncing mallet here. Nice find. Good thing we went to that ship.
Yeah, it's this cool, exceedingly cool mallet. That's how I describe mallets.
So there's another ghost here.
This is Rao.
Yeah, this is
dead Rao. Yeah, she died. As it turns out, we actually have just been talking to an imposter Rao this entire time. And yeah, so because of that, after the water dragon, we actually got an item after the water dragon too. And that item maybe has just made the imposter, uber powerful or something.
Oh, no.
So we may
Yeah.
have given her a little accidental final form.
Yeah, and maybe she went directly to Queen Himiko. So it's very important we go help Queen Himiko out. Anyway, we're gonna go do a trick to get out of bounds here. Oh, I forgot, sensitivity warning.
Yeah, further sensitivity warning. There's flashing lights here.
What we just did is we got out of the palace where we were supposed to be. Sorry for forgetting about that warning. We're basically just continuing the sunken ship quest that we should have done earlier by getting out of bounds right there.
Yeah, so the game knows that this is an urgent situation. If you actually try to leave the palace manually through the front entrance, our assistant, Isun, will literally stop you and turn you around in a cutscene and prevent you from leaving. So the only way to get out is to literally jump over the giant invisible walls by climbing on the ceiling there. And so the mallet that we got from the sunken ship is actually a magical sentient mallet that can make us smaller. So now we are Isun's size. We have Isun on our back here. But everyone's big, so we have basically a whole dungeon in a tiny space.
Very small dungeon, but it's not actually that small of a dungeon. It's just where the small was. So this dungeon is decently linear, but we still can do quite a couple, small optimization stuff. We can do a jump here, which is going to temporarily skip a cutscene. We'll hit the cutscene later, but it still saves time to do that. We have another wheel enemy here. If you haven't noticed yet, wheel enemies are rather easy to beat. It is 2 cherry bombs and power slash, and they are down for the count. Without cherry bombs, they're one of the most annoying enemies to beat because outside of cherry bomb, the only way to really damage them is to use their weakness. But as it turns out, explosives are everyone's weakness, so it works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As it turns out, not a lot of life forms are compatible with explosions. And that applies to demons as well. So we abused the fact that we skipped a cutscene trigger there to activate it from a little farther than intended. So we were able to activate the cutscene and then fall into the poison. And then the cutscene activated anyway and just put us back up onto the safe ground.
And that's just a really fun trick you can do that saves basically no time. But the key actually still exists after you give it to a lockjaw. And Isun's ability, which I used to originally grab the key, is that he can grab items from far away. We can drag him to items and he'll go and get them for us, which is very sweet. And the devs didn't think about this because the way lockjaws actually work is when you put the key in them, the key just turns invisible and loses its collision. So it basically, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't exist. But we can actually send Isun to go grab it for us. And so we now have a key to a lockjaw that's already dead. There isn't much point to this, other than right when I got it, it gave me a little bit of an extra push. But it's a fun little thing.
So we have this gourd here. We go in, we go out, as you do. And then we get a new brush technique, and this is called Veil of Mist. This power lets us slow down time.
Pretty busted power. Slowing down time is, as you might imagine, casually is basically one of the most important powers in the game for fights, since it works in fights, and it works very well in fights. Every enemy, when you use it, is slowed down, which makes it incredibly effective. For us, we'll be using it in one fight outside of where it's mostly a requirement to use, because there's just faster alternatives, pretty much. Or
yeah.
well, we don't really need to slow down time in order to hit enemies.
Overall, Veil of Mist, the main flaw of it is that you don't regenerate ink for as long as it's active. And so it can really harm our ability to efficiently solve fights in terms of brush techniques. So we rarely use it when we don't have to. We do use Isun there to pick up a quick treasure. And then we're just blitzing it to the end of the dungeon. So this dungeon is within the Imperial Palace. We are sort of crawling around the courtyard of the palace and sneaking our way up to the Emperor. We didn't talk about it earlier, but the entirety of Seon City is afflicted by a terrible plague. Everyone is sick, everyone is dying. Everyone can hardly move. Very relatable at a time like this. But we have been pretty much not helping them. Like we have been not helping a lot of people. Because it's faster. But finally we are finding the time in our day to resolve the source of the issue, and that is the fact that there is an evil tiny demon inside the Emperor who is creating a massive cloud of plague.
Pretty evil thing to do.
The drama doesn't stop.
It really doesn't. So like I mentioned, this key really doesn't have a use anymore, so it actually, we're just carrying it through the whole dungeon until now. It's just, there's actually no way to get rid of this key now because it will always respawn in your mouth if you try to get rid of it. So we are actually permanently stuck with the key, which is pretty funny, as long as we were in that dungeon. But sadly, the boss is technically a different map, and so we lose our key.
Speaking of the boss, here's our tiny evil guy. He is literally inside the Emperor. Second time we've been inside a living thing. Weird that it happened twice. Blight is basically just going to do a quick draw attack, but one thing about quick draw attacks is that they're not so quick if you slow down time. So that makes Blight vulnerable, and then as a tiny sword, Blight is very vulnerable to explosives.
Yeah, just four cherry bombs once again is enough. That's sort of another one of those things where because brush powers are meant to be used for the entire game, they scale with bosses and how effective they are. So brush powers are not only really good, they're largely better than any weapon we can have, except for very certain circumstances. So for the any percent run at least, we basically just use brush powers for everything until we just use battle items like activism slips. But for here, we're going to be using brush powers the entire time.
And this is exactly what we wanted all those Demon Fangs for. So one of the things we can buy with the Demon Fangs is a brush technique called Mist Warp. This one's actually kind of useful. This lets us warp between certain origin mirrors called true ultimate origin mirrors. And that we're going to be using to traverse the world in some unintended ways later on.
In fact, I believe actually in this run, even though this is actually a very useful item casually, it ends up in this run, we actually pretty much only use it to break things and never just to do regular fast travel. I'm just going to do a funny glitch here if I can get it in a couple tries. I would like to, because it's a funny thing. No, didn't get it there. I'll give it like 3 more tries. No, okay, I'm just gonna move on. There's a funny thing here where I don't know why, but just the way that cutscene freezes you will cause you to, if you bonk at the right time, you'll just start flying straight up in the air with no stopping. But the issue is that as soon as you can't not fall down, or basically if you end the cutscene, you can't do anything because the cutscene will instantly start again until you're back on the ground. So it's not useful at all, but it is funny.
We call that one To the Moon. And
Right
now we're going to be carefully deactivating the loading screen minigames because they do slow things down a bit and we don't need any more Demon Fangs.
Yeah.
You do have to be careful there because it's very easy to accidentally reset to the title screen, which I have
especially
done.
with muscle memory. Muscle memory is strong. I think I did that once as well. It's very, like, I have to consciously think, like, all right, I'm not quitting out right now. I'm just turning off the minigames.
Yeah, and you have to make sure you're setting the right settings because it's all in Japanese.
Yep.
Here, so Queen Himiko, in an effort to protect herself, has filled the top floor of her palace with lava.
We can
a
just
very
jump
normal
across.
security system, and we're just going to jump right over it.
Getting that first try is actually very nice. That is not something you get first try every time.
So we call that fire tablet skip. It skips an item called the fire tablet, which allows you to swim through lava. We don't like doing extra things, so we just jump over the lava. It's much faster. And here's Evil Rao. So unfortunately, Rao has chosen to betray Queen Himiko. Well, actually, she was evil the whole time. And she is, much like all evil fox spirits, very vulnerable to explosives. And full of cash.
Yeah. We've hit a point in the game where bosses are now almost worth it to fight, just for the money alone. We're not going to be really skipping bosses here anyway, but even if we could, we probably wouldn't, because they are worth just huge amounts of money.
Very nice reverse tab skip.
Thank you. The reverse, going backwards, is much easier than going forwards. Going forwards the initial jump is actually frame perfect, so that's part of why getting it first try was sort of lucky, because even though it is, there is sort of like, you can see when you're going to need to jump, but there's really not any like direct cue that works nicely for when you're going to jump, so you just have to have a feel for it. So getting that was very nice.
Yeah, so it seems like there's something in the air, because Queen Himiko has also caught in a big case of the temporarily dead. So before she took her...
that's unlucky. No, dang it.
Before she took her nap, she elected to tell us the location of Rao's secret base. So we're gonna go over there and give her a piece of our mind. So now we're sort of restricted in what we can do. This is another chase sequence where the game is trying to keep us on target. The previous chase sequence, the game was not doing a very good job with that, as you can remember. We were able to do basically 1.5 whole dungeons during the chase sequence. And unfortunately, Queen Himiko, we were not there in time to rescue her because of that. But now we are sort of out of extra things to do, so we're going to go directly to Oni Island, the aforementioned hidden base. And Seon's fine.
Yep.
Everyone's chilling.
It's nice to see him alive. One sad thing for me, at least, is another one of my favorite themes is the Seon Commerce Quarters theme. But the only time we run through there while it's pure, where that theme would play, it's during the chase sequence where the song overrides it. So a little sad, but it's how it is. It's what we do for the speed.
Fortunately, we don't have to do the skip over this border checkpoint again, just because it automatically opens during the chase sequence.
Very nice, and actually, it'll actually automatically open anytime now, which is very, very nice of the game to eventually. Because otherwise, I believe they did that just because otherwise you have to ask the guard to let you through every time, and they decided that was too annoying to do for too long.
Tippy, can you guess a color? Primary color.
Green.
Okay, let's see.
All right,
we're
let's
gonna get a green.
All right, what's it gonna be? It was blue.
It was blue.
I'm not doing very well on my guesses today.
That's okay. It was a pretty low probability for either one.
Basically, anytime when NPCs are sort of just out of the loading distance, they pop in as these sort of placeholder models, which are always colored a random color.
Oh, weird.
And Orihime is one of those characters that we see from a pretty far distance, so we like to guess what color she'll be.
Is it like any color or just like red, green, yellow, blue?
I think there's a list, but honestly, I don't know.
Okay, yeah. No
It's
big
like
deal.
7 or so colors, but yeah. So I'm immediately going to do 2 skips. The first was to skip using that Inferno pillar, which I don't have the power to use, or the item to stand on it. And then I immediately did a bonk to get out of bounds. So I am going, at the moment, I'm going to start going all the way around the mountain. Because about halfway through this dungeon, the game actually spits you outside again. You're meant to go inside and go meet a dude called Toby and race him a bunch. But instead, we're going to just go all the way around to go where it will spit us back outside.
Yeah, so this dungeon is basically a massive volcano. And fortunately, there's an area all the way at the back where there's an outdoor segment. And we can just skip right to it, because this happens to also be the place where it gives you the brush power of this dungeon. This is Thunderstorm. This gives us basically the equivalent of Water Spout, but for electricity. And we're going to use it a little bit. It's not that useful. It's a pretty good brush technique, though.
It does decent damage to enemies, at least.
Yeah, it's one of the stronger battle techniques when you can use it. And so we've already skipped about half of this first area of the dungeon, maybe more, and we're going to skip the rest of it right now. So we're doing very much so a point-to-point of this dungeon. So this one's pretty cool. Basically, there's an area here that doesn't have a ceiling, very, very thematic. And by clipping our back legs out of bounds, we can get Ami to sort of slope up as if she was leaning off of a ledge. And that lets us get a little boost in height, which lets us get just enough height to get out of bounds. And then we can just navigate our way all the way to the end of the floor. Very nicely done. And this brings us to the side-scroller segment. So this one's a little bit harder to break, but we can still do some minor skips here. Let's see if you can get the slope storage.
Oh, I got it. Nice.
Nice. So slope storage is a mechanic where if you're running up a slope and then you jump, next time you land, the sort of upwards momentum of running up that slope is stored, and you can get a very tiny boost upwards from that. And that lets us skip a short bit of platforming there.
So I'm going all the way out of my way here to get this Exum slip, which is pretty far out of the way. But it actually doesn't take too long, because we can immediately drop all the way back down to where this bamboo wheel was. And deliver the electric key. And then this next section, I can basically go as slow as I want here. So as you might have been able to tell, there's a lot of spinning things. There's a lot of cycles here, and right here is a very slow cycle where it is impossible to get there before this thing is open to pass through. We call them cheese wheels. But you can be like 7 seconds slow and not lose any time.
Yeah, as people are discussing in chat, creating resources is definitely a great way to contribute to any speedrunning community. And if those resources aren't there, you can be the one to make the difference. That's certainly what I tried to do when I first joined up the Okami speedrunning Discord community, or Okami speedrunning community. We have a Discord. Fun fact. So we have the last floor of this dungeon, or the last map of this dungeon. Last major map of this dungeon. We're going to be skipping most of it as well. In fact, this map in particular is probably one of the most skip-dense maps in the game. Not in terms of different skips we're doing right now, but in terms of different ways to skip significant parts of this map. So in this case,
probably make a speedrunning doc on just this floor.
Yeah, we're choosing a specific trick to do, which isn't the fastest way to get through this floor, but is going to get us some extra cash, and that makes it worth it. Because in this run, since we're so heavy on resource management, time is money. And so here we have Toby. Everyone say hi to Toby.
Hi, Toby.
Everyone say bye to Toby, because Toby just died.
Bye, Toby.
Sadly, Toby dies. Toby is sort of the main character of Oni Island.
He gives us lots of money, though.
He does. He gives us about 17,000 yen when he dies. We skipped. He's supposed to have 7 different races, but we just skipped. We skipped all the first ones when we went around the mountain, and there's 2 on that final floor, but we just only did one of them. The very last one to get to the end of the floor.
Rest in peace. So the boss of this secret base is Rao, of course, but Rao is actually, as we mentioned earlier, a secret fox demon named Ninetails. So they've gone full persona on us, and now we have to sort of beat it out of them. And by beat it out, I mean electrocute Ninetales and split them into 4 different spirits, which we are then going to electrocute again until they all poof out of existence. There are a lot of different things about this fight that you could talk about, but the important thing is basically we just need to aggro Ninetales, make them do this roar attack that makes them vulnerable to Thunderstorm, the lightning ability, and then we just need to take care of all of these spirits, and then they're done. It's sort of like Jalhalla in Wind Waker, a boss made up of parts that you need to defeat. But this one's a little bit more consistent. You can almost always get it done in just 2 phases.
Very good. Okay, that's...
Well, this isn't normally the kind of fight that we would use exorcism slips for, to defeat all of the spirits at once. But it's just worth it to save the money and use some more Thunderstorms. And then this final phase, Ninetales is finally more vulnerable, so we can take care of them with just a bunch of cherry bombs. Because as a giant one-tailed fox demon, Ninetales is very vulnerable to explosives.
So really nicely in that fight, I came in with something called Godhood. And what Godhood does is it lets you take hits for free. And I took 3 hits during that fight, and I came in with the maximum Godhood, which lets you take 3 hits for free, which means I didn't lose money on that fight. You can very easily lose money on that fight. I, in many ways, should have. But luckily, I apparently had avoided getting hit for a very long time, so I got a bit lucky there. Because if you do get hit, we would lose about 20,000 yen, which at this point is a really big deal.
Yeah, and
do some extra treasures to make up for it.
In general, at the end of each fight, you're given some bonus, which can up to double the amount of yen you earn from the enemies themselves. There are 2 parts to the bonus. There's a time bonus and a damage bonus. We're almost always perfect for time, because we're speedrunners, of course. But damage bonus can be a little bit tricky, because if you get hit even once, you will always lose the highest grade of damage bonus, which means you always lose your highest grade of overall bonus, which means you lose a lot of money. And we really want to avoid that in this category especially. Right here we're getting yet another optional brush technique. This is Whirlwind. We're getting this because we did that marlin fishing way earlier. So this guy had the marlin and he was able to cook it up for us.
Similar to the rice stew earlier, I'm actually eating all this fish purely because each one will give me 2,000 yen. So it's worth the money.
Yep. Unfortunately, this is one of the brush techniques that's almost completely useless. Basically, most of the secret brush techniques use a lot of ink, and they don't really have as much effect as you might like. So there's almost no time when we want to use them in battle, and then out of battle, they're almost always inferior to using the base technique. So unfortunately, just not a very useful technique. And we're going to be getting a few more of those, but it's all in service of meeting the category definition.
Yes. And it is what makes this category, because there's a lot of fun extra stuff we do because of that, and the having to get all this money and doing all these alternate battle strategies makes this category very interesting compared to 90%. We quite literally do for every single boss fight in this category, we will do a different strategy than any percent because it is or well, not everyone, all but one. For all but one boss fight, we'll be using a different strategy to save money.
It's almost every single fight period that we're doing different things.
Yeah.
Both for saving on battle items, saving on money, and also getting those full finishers earlier in the run when we need Demon Fangs. Here we're actually doing a bit of a glitch. So there's a programming error in the way these springs are programmed. What you're supposed to do is just give the highest denomination 3 times. You're given 3 amounts you can give. But if you give extra, the game is supposed to refund you any extra you gave for the brush technique, just so that you don't feel bad for being generous. But it's programmed wrong. Instead of giving you back how much extra you gave, it gives you back roughly 65,000 yen minus whatever extra you gave. And if you know anything about the number about binary, you'll know 65,000 is a suspicious number. And that's because they literally made like some kind of sign typing error. But the nice thing for us is that means if we just give the smallest denomination, so we're giving the least amount extra and then give the biggest denomination 3 times to perfectly match what we need, then we get back a big refund versus what we put in. And that can actually save us a ton of money overall on these brush techniques, especially on the ones with smaller costs, because the denominations are based on the total cost of the technique.
Yeah.
This glitch is called the Merry Christmas glitch because it was discovered on Christmas in 2020.
Yeah, this and for this spring, which is so I should say the powers we're getting right now. We just previously bought Cherry Bomb 2, which just lets you draw 2 cherry bombs, which is kind of useful sometimes. And right here we're getting Power Slash 2, which is basically, it just upgrades your Power Slash to do more damage in fights, and it lets you slice certain kinds of rocks, which previously our Power Slash was too weak to handle.
Yeah, so Cherry Bomb 2 is sort of like if you had a PlayStation and then you bought a second PlayStation. Not very useful.
Yeah.
Power Slash 2 is like if you had a PlayStation and then you bought a PlayStation 2. It's a little bit more powerful, a little bit more oomph. So it is actually kind of useful. Here we're dying.
Yeah, we're drowning. And that's because the game is, the islands aren't really considered stable ground. Orca is, but not the islands. And so because of that, if we drown, the game will respawn us at the origin, which is just the shore. And so that's just the fastest way to get back to shore.
Yeah, a little bit faster than riding on Orca all the way back here. Just a small little death warp, which is something you rarely see in this particular game because of how the death mechanics work. So the reason, it's worth mentioning now, the reason why we're playing on the Switch version in particular is not really because it's better than any of the other versions released in or after 2017. We broadly just divide the versions of this game into the PS2, the Wii, and the PS3, and then every other version. So we call those the 2017 versions because they started being released in 2017. That is the PS4, the Xbox One, the PC, and the Switch version. All of those versions, the 2017 versions, have more or less the same mechanics, the same glitches that are very similar, but they differ slightly in control scheme. The PC version specifically suffers from a minor glitch with the Steam API, which causes controls to have some minor issues when you change control contexts. But we do have workarounds for that, so it is a perfectly viable version to play on. So, Lega, do you want to explain this glitch?
So earlier when we went into the sunken ship, we did a clip out of bounds, and that clip out of bounds is actually pretty lenient, but this one is not. I'm doing actually something pretty similar here. I basically Galestormed a lily pad into the corner while walking forward, and by doing that, the lily pad basically, part of a lily pad, when it goes up against a wall, goes out of bounds, and so by doing that, the game, we stick with the lily pad when it goes out of bounds. So pretty nice for us here. You're not where I thought I was. So now this is our way into Moon Cave. We're going to do some out of bounds movement here.
So if you watch closely, you might catch a glimpse of Waka sort of sitting in front of the barrier.
Well, Waka's not here because we never beat Crimson Home.
Oh right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Waka's doing his own thing.
Waka's just not here.
But very nicely, even though you're only supposed to enter this dungeon through a cutscene, the devs did put a loading zone where you'd expect one to be. So we can just load into the dungeon. So now we're in Moon Cave, one of the coolest dungeons in the game.
Definitely.
Small correction to something I see in Twitch chat. The PC version is actually not emulated. It is a proper port of the, technically the PS3 version. All of the 2017 versions are based on the PS3 version, but they have a small patch to them.
Yeah, and part of the reason why we divide between the PS3 and the 2017 is that there were some glitches patched in them. Specifically for the New Game Plus, there's an infinite jump glitch previously that was sort of patched. Don't really need to go into that here, but that's why there's a division.
The more important change for us is that the 2017 versions allow you to skip cutscenes in New Game, which the pre-2017 versions do not, except for the Wii version. But no one likes to talk about the Wii version.
No. So right here, we're doing the Moon Cave, which is the final dungeon of the first arc. And we have the weapon given to you at the end of the second arc. So we kind of just demolish enemies here.
So
yeah, our weapon is too powerful.
Small questions, Tippy. What should we draw?
Ooh, can we draw a flower?
I can give it my best shot.
Aw, you're doing so great.
So
Nice work.
That was beautiful.
we got ourselves a nice flower.
That was actually pretty good.
So this is our disguise, because
Perfect.
the imps around here, all the imps have this mask on with a symbol on it. I think it's a kanji.
It's a katakana representing the first katakana in the Iroha, which is an old Japanese poem, classical Japanese poem.
Well, for our disguise, we just needed to draw anything on there at all, and they just think we're an imp now. So we got in. That's what matters. Before we were barred entrance for not being an imp, but now with our mask, we have become an imp.
Perfect.
A fun fact, when you're drawing on the mask there, it is actually Isun's brush, not Amaterasu's. You can tell based on the model. They have different models.
So we're immediately doing a skip here.
Yeah.
Moon Cave is kind of broken. There's a lot of stuff that is just they didn't realize quite what you could do. So right there, I used that vine to get up to the second floor early. And I didn't even need double jump to actually reach that vine. You can use that vine with single jump as well, and just skip part of the dungeon immediately. There's going to be quite a few things that we do here, which are not supposed to be done.
Yeah, what makes this dungeon really cool is it hard requires that you collect 4 items spread throughout the dungeon, and you're sort of supposed to do these in a specific order, but the dungeon itself is so broken that we can do them very much so out of order. And skip a bunch of stuff in the middle, but we still have to we still have to get all of those items. So we can't just skip to the end like we did in Oni Island, which is also cool, but this is a different kind of cool. The routing is a lot more freeform here.
Yeah.
So with our super powerful sword, we're sort of just shredding all of these enemies, because they definitely did not intend for you to have this kind of weapon this early. The weapons in Okami, the physical weapons, we haven't been talking about them too much up till now, since we've been mostly relying on brush techniques, but now we finally have the actually good weapons that are usable. The weapons can be broadly divided into 3 categories. There are reflectors, like what we started with, rosaries, and glaives. And a glaive is what we have right now. The glaives are especially powerful because they have a charge attack that you can start in the air, and it has a landing hitbox followed by yet another hitbox, and you can charge it, which does like 10 times damage. It's very powerful. Spamming the charged glaive attack is basically the highest DPS you can get.
Yeah, for the completionist category of this game, they're basically at a certain point in the game, all attacking enemies is just always doing charged glaive attacks. I'm trying to do another skip right now. There we go.
Yeah, we can just barely knock ourselves over that ledge and fall into the end of the sand room, which skips a ball pushing puzzle. We can then roll this cherry bomb over this switch, and if we do it properly, these torches get stuck on as if we had a ball pressing down the switch. And we just power slash the bomb to destroy it to prevent it from rolling back onto the switch, which would deactivate it. And that's going to come in handy later. Here we're going to skip a small puzzle by jumping over yet more collision.
It's just another wall that's just a bit too short.
Yeah, they kind of forgot to put ceilings in this moon cave.
Yeah, there are basically no ceilings. And it's worth mentioning, every single skip I've done so far is possible with single jump. You don't even need double jump to break. You don't even need to sequence break the game in order to break open Moon Cave. It's just broken on its own.
Yeah, the only thing double jump lets us do is skip one floor, basically by jumping around a cutscene trigger. Other than that, everything doesn't need double jump. This dungeon is just super broken. And this gets us the brush technique that we were actually here for. This is the only reason why we come to Moon Cave.
Just for Inferno.
Yeah, so this is...
the firepower.
If you remember earlier, we got Fire Burst, which was the upgrade to this technique, but now we're finally getting the base technique.
Also, this is a good kind of stand up and stretch, because this is basically a 30-second cutscene where we just have to wait for the imp to take us up an elevator.
This is literally the only downtime, the only significant downtime in the whole run.
Well, while we are going through the downtime, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our supporters. Your subs, gift subs, Prime Gaming subs, and bits all help support the weekly hotfix content, including this show, Time Capsule. So thank you so much. If you do have Amazon Prime, please consider supporting our daily content with your Amazon Twitch Prime.
So in order to do these brush techniques, we are drawing with controller, just because the only way to draw with touch controls is to have the switch out of the dock, which we wouldn't be able to capture. And also, the touch controls are not great, in my opinion. They're kind of slow and not very accurate. The weapon we're using, is called the Blade of Kusanagi. It is the weapon we get from defeating Ninetales. Basically, every boss you defeat gives you a weapon, with the exception of the last one. And this weapon is sort of the mid-tier glaive, but it's just so powerful for this first chapter of the game. And glaives in general are overpowered. We do actually also have a sub-weapon in this game. You can equip any weapon as either a sub-weapon or a main weapon. As a sub-weapon, the weapons all have different effects, and in this case, the rosaries are actually the best kind of sub-weapon. And so we've equipped the rosary. I forget where we got that rosary. Is it from Blight?
Yes, that was from Blight. I did do it early. So right here, we're on a very slow cannon cycle, and I have to just Inferno it at the right time. But I did it early.
Yeah, so that blows up a wall. There is technically an out-of-bounds clip to get over this wall without breaking it, but it's very obnoxious, so we don't do it.
It's obnoxious, and it would probably save like 5 seconds or something if you did it perfectly. It's a very slow skip. But yeah, as you see here, can just demolish every enemy. It's pretty funny, really. Jump attacks are really powerful, but just doing grounded attacks on these can actually be even faster. That was interesting. So that was the third of 4 ingredients. I actually jumped over a fight trigger on the way in, and to get around it, I just have to hug the left wall on the way out. Yeah, fight skip. Well, another fight being extremely easy to skip. Right here, we're going to do this final demon gate for the final demon fang. Or not demon fang, ingredient. Oh, did we get good spawns? No, we didn't.
In this case, we're actually abusing one enemy as a source of fire to defeat the other enemy quickly.
Ideally, if they spawned right next to each other, I could actually cherry bomb, do a cherry bomb and power slash to hit both of them at the same time. But it's a bit faster to do it that way if they don't spawn right next to each other. And right here is going to be the skip that does require double jump. Basically, there's a trigger here for this bridge to collapse and fall down, but I'm just going to jump around it. That trick is fairly easy, but I always get worried I'm going to mess it up because it's so easy, but also like it's easy, but also it's easy to mess up. And failing it would just make me sad, but I didn't fail it, so we're all good.
Yeah, so having collected all the ingredients, we just need to report to the imp chef, the head chef for Orochi, the evil 8-headed serpent that we mentioned at the beginning of the game. And he's going to toss it all into a big stew and make a delicious appetizer. And that is the purpose of this dungeon, basically collecting ingredients for this guy, just so that he'll call down the elevator to send up the appetizer so that we can reach Orochi's room. And to do that, we are going to have to smack this bell 10 times. Which we're going to do 8 times, so which we're going to do with a combination of power slash and air tackles.
Yeah, 8 times, 1 for each head. Big ol' hydro.
What do you think that is?
I don't know.
What do
They
you
don't
think it
even
tastes
show it in, like, Orochi's already eaten it by the time you get up there, so who knows what it is.
like? What do you
What's
think?
funny, of course, is that the elevator here actually, we can't actually ride the elevator with the food. That would be too conspicuous. So we just ask the guy nicely after he takes them up. He's just nice enough to let us go.
Unfortunately, the elevator cuts a bit short, so we still have a bit of a ramp to ride up. There's another small bit of downtime.
While we're running up the ramp here, I want to remind everyone that SGDQ 2022 remote volunteer applications are coming up. So if you'd like to help with any of our off-site volunteering positions, just go to gamesdonequick.com for more information. And also, registration is open until May 23rd. So be sure to register if you will be attending our live event in Minnesota this summer.
Yeah, so immediately what LEGO did there is spam the sub-rosary, which is sort of a long-range shotgun, like machine gun attack, and that just triggers a cutscene because Orochi's supposed to be invincible. So as soon as you hit it, it gives a cutscene. Now we're sort of manipulating things to progress through these next cutscenes as soon as possible. The Orochi fight is sort of made up of a ton of cutscenes to teach you how to fight the boss, because it's kind of contrived. And by moving in certain ways or manipulating the heads tacked in certain ways. Each head is basically its own enemy, and then as soon as we've progressed through these cutscenes, what we're going to do is a pretty complicated manipulation. We're going to activate the Earth head, cause it to slam, and then that allows us to activate multiple heads at once, which are not normally allowed to do. So we get multiple to roar at once. We then use water spout on the sake in the sort of the dishes here, and we water spout that to all the roaring heads. And the requirement for passing this phase is to get 3 heads, each drunk twice. And so we just repeat the cycle again, very smoothly. Managing all of this is very difficult. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, there's a reason I'm not talking too much right now. This is really easy to mess up this fight. This is Orochi's by far the hardest fight in the game.
Yes, and then for the second phase, we are going to be collectively defeating all 8 heads. We're going to be using the charged glaive to smack each head as it does an attack. And this is pretty tight on timing.
Like that.
Yeah, if you mess it up, you're going to have to wait for another attack.
What? I do not know how that didn't hit, actually. What
It
on
is
earth?
pretty easy to die here.
Yeah, I have holy bones, so I guess I'll use that.
Yeah, that's convenient.
This is not great. Do I still have... Okay, I do still have Seal of Fist. Okay. I am just messing this up pretty badly right now.
It's okay if this gets messed up, because we do have a backup.
Yes. Well, it's not really a backup. You actually need to just barely to defeat each head in one, so we should still be good here as long as they don't make any more crucial mistakes.
Meanwhile, there's fire randomly falling from the ceiling, which can interrupt things.
Like that. This is probably one of the worst Orochi fights I've had in a long time. Okay, please last long enough. Oh, okay, just barely. Whew. I had to space that so I wouldn't get hit by the fire too.
Right, so that was very tight. This is by far, like, there's so many moving parts to the Orochi fight to make sure things go right.
Yeah, that was definitely not a great one. Ideally you just smack each one in turn and it goes smoothly, but sometimes the hit detection isn't quite right, or you're not standing in quite the right spot for it to work. So just how it goes.
So Susanoo gets to be the hero here. He gets one more QTE where he completely obliterates Orochi.
Cutting off, annihilate every head except the last one.
Yeah, because that's in a cutscene. We get to skip cutscenes.
Yep.
So it's almost impossible to avoid getting hit during the Orochi fight. So we do, unfortunately,
we are routing in. We route in expecting to get hit during that fight.
Also, if you were paying very, very close attention there, you might have noticed a cutscene that took us to Himiko's throne room. Basically, that cutscene's supposed to be a premonition for the second arc of the game, because we just finished up the first arc just now. But the game is then supposed to give you a premonition cutscene in Himiko's palace, but it just loads the map. It just loads the whole map. And because we already went to Himiko's palace and we kind of got Himiko a little bit killed, she's just dead for that cutscene, which is kind of funny.
I also just used Mist Warp here to basically, there's a festival after you defeat Orochi, and to leave, normally you have to beg Isun to allow you to go.
Because he wants to party.
But you're not supposed to have Mist Warp yet, so the game just, there's nothing stopping you from just using Mist Warp and leaving.
While we are in Shinshu Field, we're going to take the opportunity to talk to this guy here. This is Ida. Ida's a mailman, and he's very fast. He's basically the running man. And he is part of a side quest that you could sort of do in multiple parts across the playthrough, but we're going to do all at once by just using Sunrise and Crescent to force the days to pass between each race.
This is definitely something where dash storage and being able to move at the fastest speed possible from the get-go really helps, because we're able to basically immediately catch up to Ida here, the mailman. And that allows us to go by very quickly, as long as they don't mess up. This is very easy to mess up.
He is kind of a speedrunner.
He's a little bit of a speedrunner.
Just a little bit of speedrunning.
That was a perfect Ida, so I am very happy with that.
Yeah, very nice. So in exchange for defeating him 3 times, Ida gives us the Gimmick Gear, which is a key item. It's basically a MacGuffin. We're going to exchange it for another brush technique later. Yeah, he's kind of a cool dude. Here we're going to intentionally activate a cutscene from a little far away just to avoid another cutscene. And we used first-person camera there to get our camera close enough to do that brush technique. There is a first-person camera in this game. We don't use it too often just because it stops us from moving, which we generally want to do. But in some cases, getting the camera to the right place fast is more important than getting Ami to the right place fast. And this lets us finally start the 3rd arc of the game. So we sort of mixed together arcs 1 and 2 and did them staggered in a very unintended way. But now we're finally getting to the 3rd arc, and we have a lot
I mean,
more,
there's nothing else to mix it with, so that definitely means we're going to be playing all of the 3rd arc of the game.
Yeah.
Because that's just how it goes. But yeah, this is Kamui. It is the northern land. Everything is snowy, and we're gonna immediately do a brush adventure here.
Yeah. So we're in Hokkaido. Basically, this entire 3rd arc of the game is supposed to focus on another character who we haven't met yet, named Oki. Oki is sort of a deuteragonist. We're supposed to be sort of chasing him around because he has this magic sword, and we need him to help us out. But also he's sort of being selfish. He wants to be the hero. So right now we're doing Oki skip. So we're just not going to meet Oki. We would be fighting him right now, and then we would be blowing up this mountain to reveal the sapling. But we can just clip the camera underground and then bloom the sapling from underneath the mountain, and that's just as fine. No mountain smashing necessary. We're going to do a little bit of weird movement here. We're going to collect some treasures. That weird movement was part of a skip we're going to be doing in a minute. It's actually a bit of setup.
Yeah, we're first actually going to go over here because now we've reached the end part of the game, and there's still 2 more powers we need to buy, and we really need a lot of money. So we're going to be going very far out of our way to get every treasure in Kamui, because the treasure here is just worth so much more than before. So to meet the yen requirements, we're going to be really going out of our way, like right here, where we would not normally ever head over there, but we went over there because I think that's about 45,000 yen that we just got.
Yeah, the Kamui is just loaded, basically.
Yeah, so right here I'm doing a skip. This bypasses a fight trigger with an igloo turtle, which is a bit of a slow enemy to fight.
Yeah, so that vine, activating that vine, making it available to use, sort of requires that weird movement that we did right when we loaded into Kamui after blooming the sapling. Now we're finally selling pretty much everything we've accumulated, because we need to make sure we have enough money for Cherry Bomb 3.
Yep.
If you thought having 2 PlayStations was completely useless, get ready to have 3 of them.
Now you can be a cherry bomb collector. So yeah, sadly the cherry bomb upgrades are not ways to make cherry bomb actually more powerful. If they were, they'd probably be incredibly broken. But sadly, that is just not the case. This yen requirement is actually a really hard one to make, specifically because we still want to do the Merry Christmas glitch here, which requires an extra 25,000 yen in order to make a profit of 15,000, which is worth it, but it does make it a little bit harder to meet that requirement.
Yeah, if you want to remember the math here, it's 65,000 minus whatever extra you put in. So we put in 25,000 extra, which means we get 40,000 back, but because we had to pay 25,000 extra to get that 40,000 extra, our net savings is only 15k.
But yeah, this is a great run for nerds. I am a math major, so it's only fitting.
Yeah, we literally have a big spreadsheet full of every extra way of getting money in the entire game, along with the exact amount of seconds it takes, and then we have them all rated on efficiency. And so we cross out the ones that aren't efficient, and we've narrowed it down. We know exactly what's good.
Yeah, and whenever there's new stuff found that allows us to skip something, we rather nicely don't have to put in too much work to actually know what is the best thing to replace money with, because it's all just in a huge spreadsheet.
That's honestly incredible.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of stuff, and often, making whenever there are big routing changes for this, it generally takes actually quite a long time to finish making a new route, just because of that.
Yeah, one big consideration with this is that a lot of tricks that would save a lot of time in any percent don't save nearly as much time in this category, not only because we have extra stuff to do, but because often when you skip something, you are also skipping, for example, a source of money or a source of praise, and replacing those things costs time, because time is money. So things just become a lot less worthwhile. And one thing in particular that we didn't do is a trick called half blue skip, which lets us do, basically it lets us skip the Spider Queen and lets us do pseudo ruins later than intended. And normally that would be a pretty big time save. It would save around a minute and a half. But in this category, just not having the money from Spider Queen takes up so much extra time to get that money from other places that it isn't worth it anymore. So just a cool thing that you have to consider with this kind of category.
Right here, this is Gen, and Gen is the person who wanted that gimmick gear from Ida. So we're gonna get the secondary power for Thunderstorm, which is Thunder. I think it's just Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
And it is, once again, another secondary power. Not actually very useful, but it does look cool. And somehow that teeny little gear we had was the missing piece for Gen's entire machine. That was the one thing he was missing, was a teeny little gear. I'm going to do another little trick here. Earlier, when to escape the palace, we did a trick to get over the walls. Well, this trick also just lets us jump right over the walls, so we don't have to walk through the front entrance.
Yeah, those palace guards are not doing a great job at the moment.
Yeah, we can kind of just skirt around them any way we want.
Yeah, so Himiko had a bad case of the getting attacked by an evil fox spirititis. So they erected a monument in her honor, and by washing all of the big stones back there, we get another brush technique. This one's called Deluge, and it's useless.
And right there, I once again bypassed the guards, because the guards are just, it's slow to go through the front. Better to just go over it.
walls are merely time loss.
Exactly.
You can apply the same thing in real life. Unfortunately, the legal system is a bit harder to circumvent than the sequence breaking in this game. So I don't recommend skipping through walls in real life.
Yes. So that was just a little bit of backtracking to get some secondary powers that opened up after we defeated Ninetales on Oni Island. But now we're finally in the third arc, and so far we've actually just been progressing the third arc mostly like normal. But now we're in Webkir, which is sort of the home of the Owina. Oh, I just forgot a treasure. I forgot this treasure a couple times ago too.
So the Owina are kind of loaded, so we're going to steal their savings from right out of the front yard.
Yeah, you shouldn't put your savings in your front yard in a chest where a dog can dig it right back up.
Same thing applies to all sorts of things you don't want people to find. Do not bury them in a shallow ground where dogs can dig them up. Strong recommend. Now there's also some bears here. No, they're just chilling.
Yeah, we're just stealing the bears' savings as well. But now we're going to do a trick.
Yeah, there's a guy back there, another Owina, who's very angry with us. I don't know why. Basically, there's a big mountain here, and the snowpack here is very thick, but it's very fluffy.
Yeah, so we can just go right through it. Yeah, but the texture is just lifted off the collision here for some reason. But basically, we climbed up this mountain all to get over another invisible wall. And now, by doing that, we can just skirt around the edge of this mountain. Losing all my speed. To get behind this closed gate here. And then we can clip back in bounds and head on to the next area. And that skip saved like a minute. We still haven't actually skipped that much. We're intended to get here pretty soon.
Yeah. All that skips is talking to a few different Owina to get the feel for what's actually going on in their village. But we don't have time for talking and hearing what people's problems are.
Yeah. We're here to learn how to draw. And we're trying to learn as many ways as possible to draw. Collecting every single crayon.
This is the 64 pack.
Right down there on that ledge is actually that's where the hole into the shrine for the Divine Spring for Power Slash 3 is. But we don't have that much money right now, so we'll have to come back for that. That spring is the most expensive spring in the game, and it will cost us every last penny we got in order to get it.
So there's someone's house here. We're just going to jump on top. We're going to get stuck on this vine that's going to pull us way up high. Hopefully we don't get stuck.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah, so that lets us get behind an invisible wall. There's this big gate here, and we can just clip right behind the gate and enter the loading zone. And this brings us to Waku Shrine, the final dungeon of the game. So if you know anything about this game, you'll know that skip, that very drab-looking skip, actually just skipped an entire, a massive segment of gameplay. Basically the equivalent of a whole dungeon, where we're supposed to visit Isun's hometown and go back in time and defeat Orochi again. But in the past, it's really cool, but it's also really slow, so we skip all of that just by jumping over an invisible wall and getting into this dungeon a little early.
This is the Waku Shrine, which is essentially, it's got this huge tower, and we've got this lockjaw in front of us, but luckily we don't need the key. Instead, all we need is a bit of just that. By melting this icicle from back there, it warps us right past the key, which is one of the easiest skips to do. There's a little bit of an issue with that. The way to get that key is to balance some scales in another room, and to balance those scales requires us to... and balancing those scales, by not doing that, when we go to fight the mid-boss of this dungeon, we will crash the game. So that's a bit sad. It'd be a real shame if our game crashed here.
Yeah, so just keep that one in the back of your mind.
But right here I'm doing I'm just doing some movement here to get some treasure. Hopefully I make this cycle. That wasn't the fastest I've gotten those treasures. My hope here is that this water spout will not start going down until I'm at the top. It did not. And that lets me... That's just the fastest way to get some more money. Also gonna go way over here, and I'm gonna do some movement here to hopefully skip a cutscene. There we go. It's just like a 9-second cutscene.
Very important not to fall down here, because we did skip that lockjaw, but we can only skip that lockjaw once. Because we used the cutscene to skip past it. We can't activate that cutscene anymore since we already used it up. There's technically another way to get around it, but it's pretty slow, so we tried to avoid that. Another thing you'll notice, we're picking up basically every treasure we see here, and that's just because
this is essentially the
in,
last dungeon of the game.
Yeah, they stuffed in all the high-value treasures at the end.
Oh, I skipped this. But finally, after all this time, we are finally almost to the end here. We have a fight with the Great Tengu, which is sort of supposed to be one of the harder enemies in the game. Probably one of basically the hardest regular enemy. But rather sadly, he falls to 3 cherry bombs and a bit of extra damage.
Yeah, they're pretty vulnerable. They fortunately pay out a lot of money though.
They do. Got a nice little paycheck from that. So this is just another puzzle. We're meant to go into like this little side cave to learn when we're supposed to slice those wheels. We're also meant to slow down time to make it easier to slice those wheels, but we already know the answer to the puzzle, and we can just use brush buffers to get to slice it at the right time instead of slowing down time and waiting.
And this gives us our final primary brush technique, Blizzard, basically water spout but for ice. It also gives us a secret brush technique that the game doesn't really tell you about called Snowstorm, which is also called, we also like to call it Snowflake. It basically lets you make ice anywhere by drawing a snowflake symbol. The snowflake symbol is famously extremely hard to actually make the game recognize, even for speedrunners. We don't really have a 100% consistent way of drawing it, we just have guidelines. But fortunately...
So that was skip.
Oh yeah, nice one. So that just skipped about half the dungeon.
Yeah, so it's not too crazy hard of a skip, but it is pretty difficult. And importantly, it allows us to skip the entire mid-boss of this dungeon, which means our game will crash. So that's pretty nice.
So we are supposed to destroy all of the cannons on this side of the gorge before we come over to this side of the gorge, but that would take too long, so we just do not do that.
Yeah, we just take some hits and hope for the best. We actually can't light the cannons on the other side to blow up these cannons in any percent. So I am pretty comfortable not bothering. Don't really have a choice for other categories.
Yeah, so basically the devs the level designers made the maybe ill-advised choice to make one of the last rooms in the dungeon an exterior room adjacent to one of the earliest exterior areas in the dungeon. And so we were able to just sort of platform from one to the other by abusing some out-of-bounds geometry.
It's somewhat similar to when we did that in Oni Island, where we got out of bounds just because it happened to jut outside again later. So right here I'm doing something called hot gear room, or fast hot gear room, where basically it's faster for these gears. You're meant to freeze them to get jump across, but you can just jump around these outside platforms, and that's faster than bothering freezing them, since it would take using that snowflake power that Ori mentioned, or the actual intended way is to roll an ice ball from the outside, but rolling an ice ball from the outside is definitely not very fast.
So yeah, I remember I mentioned when we first entered Kamui that this whole arc is supposed to be about Oki, the Oina warrior with a magic sword, and how he sort of redeems himself from being a bit selfish. In this run, he's reduced to being an elevator dog. He's a dog, we talk to him, he's in an elevator, he barks, and the elevator rises.
That is the only time we see Oki.
Yes, so say goodbye to Oki, everybody.
And right here is going to be the only time we copy a strategy from any percent. Because it is pretty fast to just use action slips on these bosses.
We do it a little differently. Instead of using 5 large exorcism slips, we use 2 medium and 3 large, just to save on some cash.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one boss the devs forgot to give any kind of invulnerability whatsoever to exorcism slips. With most bosses, you have to at least do something to make them vulnerable first, but these bosses, not only are they not vulnerable, but there's 2 of them, and they're both equally damaged by the exorcism slips. So we just destroy them both at the same time. Very effective.
Because of that exorcism slip strategy, it is actually equally fast to destroy the mid boss, which is just one owl, as it is to destroy both owls at the end.
Yeah, so
right here, we're going back up for Power Slash 3, like I mentioned, we would do. Since we finally have the money. A lot of that money is from those owls we just beat. For the low price of 5 exorcism slips, we got 160k, which is equal to 16 large exorcism slips. So it's a very good deal for us, that boss fight.
yes, and for this particular spring, we are not going to be doing the Merry Christmas glitch, and that's just because the low denomination is so big, because the overall price is so high, we barely get anything extra from doing the Merry Christmas glitch, so it's just not worth the time. And we've already spent all of the big money, so we actually don't really need any more money in this run. At least not any extra money. We're not going to be picking up any extra treasures.
Definitely did. This is definitely. I have a larger surplus of money than I normally do at this point. I have 15k extra, and I only picked up 5,000 extra. So I guess I think this is the first time I've actually successfully not missed any money in a run. So that's nice. I think I've nearly always forgotten to pick up something at some point normally.
Yeah, there's so many different specific treasures you have to pick up in this run, and they have changed over time as we make changes to the route. It's easy to forget something. We have actually data mined the location of every single treasure in the game as well. We have a site where we have taken pictures of the location of all of them. So if we ever did need to know where something specific was, like if during a run we forgot to get something and we needed a backup, we can always look up it on that site.
I did not get it.
Oh, okay. So there is a small skip you can do there, which is about 1 second, where you skip a little cutscene that you just saw. The downside is if you miss the skip, you fall down and you lose about 30 seconds. So a high risk, low reward.
I'm not buying anything. This is all brushes. So that's the merchant here. So story-wise, we are now on the Ark of Yamato, which, for all intents and purposes, is like the source of all evil. Basically, lore-wise, these people came from the moon, and they brought with them a bunch of demons, and the demons took over, and all the moon people died. It's very sad. And actually, all the moon people we see on the ship are also, they're basically ghosts.
I don't think the Celestials are moon people. I think the Ark is from the moon, Waka's from the moon. The Celestials are from the Celestial Plane, which is not the moon.
Oh, okay. I'm mixing up things, but
it's okay.
That's just how it is.
Speedrunners aren't well known for their knowledge of story. We did sort of take some editorial liberties with the story here. Not gonna lie.
I mean, to be fair, from the very beginning, we skipped about 11 minutes of cutscene. So the game tends to tell you quite a lot at the beginning.
Yeah, we definitely did give a bit of a Cliff Notes version.
That's we done. We are how nice. All right, so we are at this point doing this is the Ark of Yamato is, for all intents and purposes, just a boss rush. where we refight all the main bosses of the game. That did throw it. Sometimes Ninetales will be randomly immune to the cherry bombs, which can be rather annoying.
Another thing about this particular boss rush is that for most of the bosses, we're going to be standing in specific spots at the end of the fight. That is because there are blue warps or green warps that spawn. We don't want to stand inside the green warp. We want to stand just outside of it, because if we stand where the green warp spawns, it won't activate until we exit the warp and then come back in. And so we just want to stand right outside to begin with. So that takes care of the refight with Ninetales. We're refighting every boss, except for Lechko and Nechko, who we just fought earlier anyway. And now we're going to fight Crimson Helm, which is the only boss that we actually skipped in this run.
Yeah,
the only major boss.
Yeah, so for major bosses in this run, that we in the 90% run, we actually would only do one refight here. The rest of them would all be new fights. But for us, however, I need to not mess up that. But for this category, we have to fight all but Crimson. Am I too slow? Nope, not quite. So right there, you just saw the power of Power Slash. Power Slash is very powerful because we upgraded it to Power Slash 3. And for basically these boss fights, normally during the 80% run, we would be mashing Exorcism slips on all these fights, and now we're just going to be slicing and dicing every boss.
Sounds very powerful. I don't remember if we activate, or we did mention earlier about Infinity Stones. They give you infinite ink for about a minute, excluding load times. And the boss fights are just short enough that we can actually carry this Infinity Stone for 2 boss fights instead of just 1.
One of the downsides of using Power Slash 3 is that we're having to run through our ink a lot, and at this point, we really, because of all the stuff we skipped, we don't get the praise to let us have enough ink to just do it. So we need a couple infinities to get through this boss rush. But
do you want to try maximizing your tilt into the warp?
Maximize my tilt into the warp? I can try. I can also just do a hop at some point. Oh, can I even get in? There we go. We got some nice tilt. That's some good quality tilt.
The warps have a weird effect where they preserve Ami's angle when you walk into them. So it looks like she's sitting all tilted.
It's hard to describe, but it's fun to do it here, but it's very fun to do it in Gale Shrine. There's a warp to take you up to the elevator from a spot, and it sort of does this animation where it shoots you out. And if you do tilt into that one, you'll get shot out at whatever angle you're at, which looks very funny. This is also, I feel, a good time to mention that as long as I don't mess up anything at this point, which is, I shouldn't, this should be world record.
That would be wonderful. Okay, so we have a refight with Orochi. This Orochi is the true Orochi, so he's a little bit stronger than the Orochi we fought in Mood Cave, but the nice thing is he doesn't have all those cutscenes. So we have a lot less to worry about, but it's still a tough fight. For the first phase, our strategy is going to be pretty similar to last time. We're going to be activating the Earth Head, aggroing the Poison and Light Heads, and then getting them all to roar at the same time. It's actually really important the way you draw that long water spout between all 3 heads. it's very easy to get the game to accidentally recognize it as a fire burst instead, which is very slow. So we have to intentionally keep the line unlooped to prevent the game from thinking it's a different technique. Here we are actually using a very different technique for the second phase. Because this Orochi has a lot more health than the Orochi we fought in Mooncave, we can't just one-hit the heads with our glaive. And if you can't one-hit them, then the strategy just doesn't work at all, because the heads have a weird recoil animation which makes them invulnerable. So instead, we're using our brush techniques. We're getting each of them drunk by making them do a roar attack. And then as we're going by, we're trying to not only get one head drunk, but we're trying to damage the previous head just enough that it actually dies with the next water spout. So everything's super staggered. We're basically trying to take care of 3 heads at once, depending on how you think about it.
Yeah, I'm basically worrying about 3 heads at the same time, which is difficult.
Your positioning affects the attack that the next head does, and some attacks are faster than others. So we're trying to manipulate one head while getting the next head drunk while damaging the head before it. So that's 3 heads. And if you want to jump on Orochi's back there after this.
I'll do it. If I can power slash. Oh my goodness. My power slash just wasn't working. I don't know why. That's very annoying, because now, this seems to happen every time with this head if I don't do it. The heads will clip under the ground for some reason. Oh, I got hit by it. Oh my god, can I even get on top? I lost my speed. Alright, well, I didn't get on top. Oh well.
Yeah,
I got hit by the head as it fell there.
You're allowed to climb on the back of Orochi, and if you do it as it's dying, then you get to stand in the invisible hole in the middle of the arena. Yeah, but then it just warps you out. Yeah, overall that was a good Orochi fight, I would say. Certainly a lot smoother than what you might see casually.
Yes. That was still definitely not my best Orochi fight. Definitely a bit rough, but definitely still gets the job done.
And we have
It's very hard to keep consistent with a lot of these strategies.
One more refight here. We have Blight, the little guy from the Emperor way back in Seon City.
My movement at the start of this fight does matter. I'm moving a little bit forward to get him to do this dash attack immediately. Otherwise he'll go through another attack first. And then rather than using cherry bombs, we can just use 3 power slashes and 2 regular hits. And all that combined is just enough to take him out. So Blight stays being a relatively simple boss to defeat.
So, now that we have defeated all the bosses in the boss rush, the portal to the final boss opens. But rather than going straight into the final boss, we have something to use all of the rest of our money on. So we've talked a little bit up till this point about the sheer power of exorcism slips, but because we've been pinching our pennies, you haven't gotten to see that much. Well, hold on to your calculators, because we're about to do some counting.
Yeah. This is a pretty long final boss fight. Has 5 separate phases. So to start off this first phase, we're going to immediately use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 exorcism slips. Because all of Yami's phases are not invulnerable in the slightest to exorcism slips.
Yeah, shoutouts to the best music in the game, by the way. The theme of this fight is, at the beginning in the cutscene that we just skipped, Yami steals all of your brush techniques. So you start with none, and then you have to retrieve them by literally beating them out of Yami. And normally this would be quite difficult, right? Because you're weak without all your techniques. But obviously, Yami was smart enough to take our brush techniques, but not to take our actual anti-demonic explosives. So he's getting a bit of a thrashing.
We can do quite a lot. We can do quite a lot with just Exum Slips.
Now, we do still have to use techniques at certain times on Yami to progress the fight, but for the most part, for damage, we're relying very heavily on the Exorcism Slips.
Yeah.
And then we can't, unfortunately, just drill through each phase with Exorcism Slips. We do have to get every technique in the proper order, regardless of whether we need them or not. And for each technique, we have to do at least some damage from the last technique, even if we've reached the damage threshold to unlock it. So we try to use a bunch of Exorcism Slips at the start of each phase, and then one for every technique after that. And each technique is a little different, or each phase is a little different. This second phase here is actually vulnerable to direct attacks. It just doesn't do much damage. But by doing as many attacks as possible, we can actually save one Exorcism Slip across the whole phase. And also, in case we don't have Godhood, we can build up Godhood during this phase. Godhood is useful mainly because it makes the final phase very slightly safer.
It's not exactly terribly unsafe if we don't have it, but yeah. So at this point we have a lottery machine, so this is I do need to get very lucky here, and luckily I did. Managed to get all 3 blue orbs.
At the start of this phase, using I think 5 Exorcism Slips.
Yep.
We call that rigging the slots, because slot machines, much like all gambling devices, are very vulnerable to explosives. So yeah, as long as we have enough damage built up, we're guaranteed to get all 3 brush techniques. And that's easy to do.
I guess we get to have a blinky Yami fight. I took fire damage and I didn't realize it until the cutscene just showed me on fire.
Yeah, so if it wasn't obvious already, we've been trying to talk over it, but this fight is a bit of an auto-scroller, mainly because we have to wait for all of Yami's animations and wait for the animation of getting each brush technique back. So our abilities to speed up this fight are a little limited. Since we have some time, as we do during all auto-scrollers, I think we'd like to take this time to thank a lot of the people involved in helping make this happen. Of course, we'd like to thank GDQ for having us on for this show.
Of course.
I'd also like to thank a lot of the people in the Okami Speedrunning Discord community. I keep saying Discord, it's just a force of habit. Obviously, we have a great community around the game, not just speedrunners, but also a lot of people who have found glitches, a lot of people who are just in the chat giving their support, or sometimes even giving ideas for glitches. It's surprising how many things have been found just because one of us was, hanging out after a run, asking for ideas from chat, and then trying things out. A more successful strategy than you might imagine. So in particular, I'd like to thank a lot of the people watching this right now. Eternal Darkness, Astral, Davey, Firestar. I'd like to thank some of the people who couldn't be here to watch, like Kinnan, like Moon Girl, like Sinri, like Skyryan, like Cookie, previous runner, like Krino, another previous runner. Lego, anyone you would like to thank as we completely shut through the final phase?
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think you mentioned all the important names.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's more that I forgot.
That is time.
Yes, so
GG.
We do generally time this category by in-game time, and that is a very good time there to see.
Yes.
3:3:48.
That is a world record by a little under 2 minutes. Which is pretty
Wow. You got, wait, just now?
good. Yep, this run.
Oh my god. That's amazing. Great job.
This category isn't necessarily super competitive, but I did actually get a PB just a couple days ago. So being able to beat that is pretty nice.
Yeah.
That's gonna be one for the highlights. Oh, but yeah, that was incredible. Thank you all so much for watching. We are actually going to get into a short glitch showcase if you want to stick around. It's like the after party, so you'll want to stick around.
All right. Yeah, I guess that's it for this. So I'll switch on to that.
A couple cool but useless glitches that are still really, really neat results from all of the glitch hunting we've put together as a community.
So I switched my profile here just to switch to a different set of saves that I have that is going to be more convenient for this.
Yeah, one nice quality of life thing about speedrunning this game, every version has 30 saves, and in most versions of the game you can get more saves just by switching your profile. Doesn't mean you have to remake the more saves from scratch, but it is a very nice way of organizing things if you, for example, run multiple categories.
Yeah. So I have one for all brushes. These are my any % saves, and I also have one for New Game Plus. But so let's show off a couple glitches. So the first one I want to show here is a pretty simple one. I'm first going to get down to 1 ink, and then I'm going to hop in this curse zone, and I'm just going to hang out here a little bit. Fun little curse zone.
Yes. I'm glad
And then
trying this off.
I am now at less than 1 ink, and the game actually still lets you use the brush at less than 1 ink, which wouldn't really be that big of a deal. If I drew something, it would just exist and nothing would happen. But as it turns out, the pot up here in the upper right-hand corner is meant to tell you when you're going to run out of ink. And when it actually uses your current ink pots to do that. And so it actually can't run out of ink if you have less than 1 ink pot.
I was gonna ask.
So I can actually keep drawing here, not quite forever, but I can draw here for quite a long time. I stopped drawing with the fast brush. Yes. I should have been kicked out of the brush quite a long time ago. And if I keep drawing with the fast brush, the game will just crash. Oh, I kept drawing for too long. Well, all right, have to boot up saves again. That's okay. I thought drawing with slow brush would be fine, but apparently not.
So that is a fun way you can crash the game. We call it the canvas ink overflow glitch.
Yeah, something like that. There are ways to actually, if you only draw with the slow brush, the game won't crash at all. And eventually, the game will stop producing ink or the sound effect for putting down ink when you try to draw. It basically stops letting you draw at all. Like it runs out of space to let you draw. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the way this glitch was found was actually one of the few glitches that was discovered purely through reverse engineering. Basically, I was investigating the way the ink mechanics work, how the values are stored, and I realized there was an edge case that I thought wasn't checked for, and it turns out I was right. So it's very rare. There are only a couple ways you can actually get under 1 ink pot with that while the game still lets you use the brush. And that's mainly just because in most cases, if you use the brush with less than 2 full ink pots, the game will actually take away all of your ink. It'll make you inkless and then distribute the remaining ink across 3 ink pots that lets you then recharge it.
So I'm now going to show off another thing. So I'm going to activate this walking while talking that I actually did during the run. This is just a nice skip. But now, while I have walking while talking, I'm going to try to make it all the way to... There we go. Yeah. So the first thing to show is this cutscene is a little glitched, and I actually can't skip it. Skipping it just restarts the cutscene, so I'm going to let it play out. Basically what happened is during walking while talking, I ran back to the fight that I skipped. And because of this, I believe the game is basically deloads all the textures and stuff from over here. But it also has some other unintended side effects. So right now, Ami's looking a little gray, which was not supposed to be, which is not normal.
Little toasted marshmallow.
Yeah, a little toasted marshmallow.
Some potential photosensitivity warning for some of the things we're going to show.
Yeah, I'll make sure to say something before we get to when it gets pretty bad, but good to put that out there now. One weird side effect that I actually learned really recently is if you go, so when I did that glitch, I actually didn't fill this pool with water, but it automatically added it anyway. So I can walk along the bottom of the pool, and for some reason I look normal under the water texture. If I go below, I turn back to gray, but the water texture turns me back to normal. And now, where am I going here? So I'm going down this area that we never actually went to normally, because we could just do that glitch to stop it. And now I'm going to get to show something else that's cool. So this is a cherry bomb wall. It's really hard to tell with the glitch textures, but this is a cherry bomb wall from the opposite side. And when I use the brush is very messed up. At the moment, the brush, basically everything turns black except for like highlights. So Ami here still has white highlights over her, and that bit of like cherry bomb light is still able to shine through. So I'm gonna draw a cherry bomb, blow up this wall, to get through from the opposite side. And now we're back over here. So this is where the definite sensitivity warning needs to come in. I'm gonna enter the curse zone with this glitch, which will have a lot of vibraty kind of stuff. So the curse zone is now red and blue.
Very funky.
It looks super funky. I have no clue why it looks like this. And if I use the brush, everything is white with this really thin black lines. So that's pretty funky. Oh, I that's okay. Because going into that curse zone didn't just show us some funky textures. It actually changed the brush textures. So now when I go to open the brush, everything is now black and white, which just looks super cool. So once again, no clue why it looks like this, but for some reason that has now messed with our brush texture. So I can go into the fight here. This is the fight that we skipped, and just fight a little bit and show what this looks like. It's very funky. Obviously, the game not really liking this. I'm trying to think what else there's to show with this.
Go to the bell tower.
Yeah. So the cursed zone texture is definitely pretty funny. I don't want to go in there again, just to make sure everyone's okay. There is one fun thing to do here, which is just I think Oren made like a GIF of this a long time ago, but with the brush rotating around the bell looks super cool here. Those flashes I'm not sure what causes them. If I let go of the brush there, it'll flash red on the screen, which is really weird. I have no clue what causes that. Actually, I am going to the curse zone again for a brief moment here. I'm going to do the dojo clip. It might take me a couple tries. Oh, no, there we go. And I'm going to try to do dojo clip without the dojo there. And this will show, first of all, something that's kind of sad, which is that the dojo actually isn't here. I'm just in an empty box. There's nothing to see here.
We don't need to see the dojo to believe it.
Yeah, exactly. But what this does do is gives us a nice background for Ami, because while we were looking at other things with the brush, we didn't necessarily look at Ami with the brush on, who, in my opinion, just looks super cool. Like, yeah, I love how this looks. Yeah, dark Ami, evil Ami. I especially love like the shadow turning white. I don't know. I just love how this looks.
That's so cool. That's wallpaper material.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it for this glitch. That's all the visual things that I know about that aren't like just painful for the eyes. If you get damaged while in that state, it's really bad. But I'm not going to do that because it would just look annoying.
Sure. Yeah.
So now I'm going to do another funky glitch.
Also, fun fact: if you activate that glitch and then leave the map, it deactivates it, and then you can progress normally. But it can also cause crashes if you do certain things. Not the most stable trick.
Yeah, yeah.
But we definitely want to avoid that.
It's just meant for fun, it's not the only point of it is for having some fun-looking textures. So at the moment, I'm in Pseudo Ruins, and I'm here because there's a trick we can do here. In the run, normally when you come in here, there's 3 gates. In this file, I've just already destroyed those gates. So after you destroy the gates, you're meant to draw a sun in the sky up there, and that'll grow these mushrooms right over there. But after you draw those mushrooms, the game will finally show you some pots that have actually been up here this whole time. And these pots cannot be destroyed through Power Slash, which is a little bit annoying. But luckily, they can be destroyed with Fire Burst. Now, you couldn't see anything happen there. I did a brush adventure to destroy all the pots before they're shown. But when I draw the sun in the sky...
Lego, how did you get Fire Burst here?
How did I get Fire Burst here? That was because I did a skip on this file that allowed me to get double jump and Fire Burst and other stuff by getting across the Agata River without defeating the Spider Queen.
Right,
doing
so
the minigame.
Doing this trick in this way requires doing another skip that we didn't show. But you can actually do the same thing with Cherry Bomb instead. It's just a lot slower because you have to do each pot individually and they're all invisible.
Yeah. So now I'm going to try to leave. But what that skip we just did do is it stored a cutscene. And by triggering another cutscene, that cutscene plays. And now we have Walking While Talking. Walking While Talking, to be frank, doesn't do a whole lot for you in this game. At least right off the bat. We can bring this text with us wherever we go, but it doesn't necessarily do a whole lot on its own. Right now, the text has just gone through to a prompt, and this prompt is actually asking me if I want to leave Suda. And if I say yes, I can actually just leave Suda from anywhere in the dungeon. The game will just say, "All right, you're out of here." So I want to do that at a really specific time. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to get this constellation. I'm going to say yes to that prompt. And then when the game tries to switch cutscenes, it plays that cutscene and takes me through the loading zone. And I'm kicked out to Agata Forest. But if you look around, Agata Forest doesn't look quite right. It's kind of missing like all the trees. There's supposed to be some deer by the front here. There's like chests and stuff. There's tons of stuff that's supposed to be here and it's all gone. But there's a much more interesting side effect of this glitch, is that my height can't change. I am stuck at the exact same height. So if I try to just walk forward, I don't walk down the slope, I just walk forward and until I'm in midair, which is obviously very funky.
And we also have no clip.
Yes, we also have no clip. So if I walk through here, you can see I just kind of go straight through the floor. And if I go through here, I can just walk through any wall. So that's some fun stuff. I'm not going to get closer here, but if I can line up the camera, you can see that that's Susano over there T-posing. Not all, but a lot of NPCs just T-pose in this state. So the state I'm in right now, we call it just height lock no clip. And it doesn't really have much use. Because one, it's very hard to set up, and two, it's just, you're restricted in a lot of ways. But there are some fun things to do with it. Another fun thing I can do is that right now I'm in inner cam. Well, I guess I should mention one other thing. I can't actually control the camera very much right now. I can't just turn the camera around. The only way I can change the camera is when I move around, the camera will follow me. And if I turn around, I can use the R3 button to swing the camera around. But I cannot directly move the camera. If I try to switch to the outer cam, which is like the far away one, the camera just freezes. And instead, it for some reason just gets locked in place. If I try to go to the first person camera, Ami just disappears. Disappears from reality.
Peace out.
Her shadow's still there, and she can pop back in afterwards. But while in there, she's just gone.
I actually haven't seen that before.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's actually just a side effect of when you go into first person, the game makes Ami go invisible so that she's not blocking your view. But it's pretty funny when the camera can't actually move into Ami. Now, I don't have any good way to go down. However, I can go up right now. By doing this a lot, I can slowly make my way up the slope. By jumping and then instantly air tackling. Basically, air tackling will increase your height pretty nicely. So we got a little bit of height there. I can't really go back down, but that's okay. I don't really want to go back down. If I go in here, we can see that the house just doesn't exist. All the textures down there are gone. And there's a couple of things I want to show with this. So one thing is that I'm not going to do it, but if I go over water, I can't land afterwards. I will be unable to get back into a walking state, and I can only float around really slowly. So I'm going to actually clip out of bounds here with no clip and just fly around. I did a tackle jump there to get a ton of speed. Since rather nicely, we don't have to just float around in the air. If we do the tackle jump, we can keep some speed. Here, the camera gets a little funky with a locked cam. But I'm just going to go all the way over here.
Just slipping on through.
Yeah, just slipping on through, you know, perfectly normal. This is a normal Okami movement. You know, can just lock the camera sometimes for the fun of it. And now I'm going to land.
It's like a cinematic camera in a Grand Theft Auto game.
So now I'm going to go get in a fight. Fights, rather nicely, don't crash the game. However, there are some very funny consequences. So the first thing is, I haven't mentioned it yet, I'm invincible and I have infinite ink. So these imps really can't do anything to me. Another thing is that it's not only me, enemies also suffer from height lock no clip. So if I can get this enemy to maybe come over here, you can see that this imp should just be able to walk through the ground. And the fish also, it's supposed to grab me here, but it just misses. There we go. Now the imp's playing in the ground. They can also just leave the fight as well, which can be pretty annoying. But now I'm going to leave the fight just by walking out. And I'm going to walk back in, because if I walk in and I immediately attack them with Power Slash, they just, wait, they didn't do it. Why didn't they do it? Wait, what? It worked before when I did it. I'll try it again. So what I'm hoping for is, will it work? No, what the heck? Why is it not working? Maybe I need to be in a different state or something. I don't know, that's very weird. I don't know what was making it work before. I'm hoping to, yeah, I'll give it one more try. Right here, let me try one thing. I'll go over here and I will, here, let me get to a floating state. Maybe that will make this work. Come over here, scroll. Don't make me land. There we go. Let's hope this works. Nope, it doesn't work. Okay, what I wanted to do is that the AI, when I was messing with this before, just froze. Like, it just didn't move. That did not seem to happen this time, which is a little sad. But, oh, I guess I should show one thing, though, which is I should just defeat the enemies to show that the game is still messed up. And if I just defeat them, they're just gonna die. And the animations are gonna be kind of messed up, where there's this freaking huge flower right there. The green imp yen takes forever to spawn. I don't know why. And the fight just ends. There's no result screen, there's no nothing. I guess as a final little hurrah, we can say hello to our Demon Fang friend, T-posing with his umbrella on the ground.
Do a double jump.
Do a double jump?
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. All right, so if I jump, I just float around like... basically, your animations get stuck on their last frame. So if I ever jump or double jump, I'm just stuck in that last frame. So if I jump, I think it's the funniest, where Abby is just upside down. Just floating around upside down.
Oh my god.
She's relaxing.
Yeah. She's just, you know, sunbathing.
She's like, world record run, no big deal. Just gonna relax now.
Just gonna relax.
Everybody can chill.
Sadly, Karude over here isn't T-posing. I guess at this point, I don't think there's much more to show here, so I'll go over the water just to show that Ume is still moving, but we do have a very nice Kokari T-pose here, if I do say so myself. You know, he's just looking stellar.
He's exerting his power over the fish.
This is him exerting his power over the Whopper. Ume is just there, wagging his tail.
Pleased with the state of affairs.
Yeah. But if you look on the ground, I actually don't have a shadow anymore. My shadow's just gone. And that's because I went over the water. The only way to get this back is if I can still go back to Suda Ruins, and that would give me my shadow back, but I think that's about it for what I wanted to show of this. And I think that's all I really wanted to show for the glitch showcase. Just some fun stuff